Okay. All right. Right. We're 5 by 5. And
Who knows? Am I you or you me? Who's really here projecting this reality right
well,
now?
I'll tell you right now, I'm not here. I mean,
Yeah, well, yeah. And I just asked the infinite divine, am I real?
yeah. Okay. So everybody over there on my channel who've been suffering through this whole thing, you guys are the most patient. I really appreciate you. You're amazing. We really hadn't gotten into anything too deep. Nothing that you guys probably haven't heard. It
No.
was just my initial story, basically till I was 10 years old, and that's really all we've covered. So you guys haven't missed much. And
Robert's origin story.
yeah,
Robert's origin
Robert's
story.
origin story. So I'll just go on from there. So when I saw the show In Search of, and we had already had experience. We had already been into Canada several times by that time, and really remote places like 70 Mile House and 100 Mile House, which were basically 100 miles from anywhere, and places you had to take float planes into, whatnot. And so with that all exposure, by the time that show came out, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. But what I noticed even then, he was portrayed as a myth or a mystery, when I knew before that it was just kind of being put out there as a fact. And it wasn't until later on that I actually saw and made aware of that change, and that change as well fueled me to go find more truth. And the only way, long before the internet and the way things are now, it's totally different now. You can find literally nothing and just talk and be on top of the highest pier. And then I never saw that as applicable though. What I wanted to do was go find the stuff and just set it on the table, because anybody can say anything, but I wanted to leave a lasting impact so it could begin to alter our understanding of our world, and see that the wonder's not gone, and not only that, that there's an entirely different story than what we've been told. And so that kind of led me into all kinds of stuff, alternate history. And when I got into Central Arizona, in I think 87, 88, we used to just let the long hair down, get tennis shoes, no shirt, couple of water bottles, and jog and tear off in the worst desert you can imagine. And we'd get told all the time, man, you guys are going to die doing that. But the stuff we were able to find in a short period of time doing those kind of things, and one of them was, and with some interpretation and things after time, was Coronado's winter home. And we didn't know exactly what it was. And then, once we learned the heritage and the history, it's still lost. No one knew where he went during the winter. And it led to a whole story about where they actually turned during his expedition before they got to the Zuni Pueblo, and the whole 9 yards about the 7 cities of Cibola and all this. And then I got with the Apache, who then told me their rendition of his coming and crossing and eating the Black Moor because they thought he was a spy, and all this other stuff. So it took me down an avenue to reality in finds, not just the supposition of this history being hidden, but actually here's the discovery. And then, of course, here we are today. That gets addictive. And the Bigfoot thing, well, they're just out there.
Yes.
So if you end up in all these wild places, you're going to see a lot of stuff, man, from apparitions to off-worlders to Bigfoot to, yeah.
Right. They have to be open and receptive to knowing that the universe and our reality is far, far grander, fuller spectrum than what we've been led to believe. And
Yeah.
I think just having an open mind to those things can at least give people the opportunity to have that vision. But like you said, you've had it since you were a kid. So you came into the realm turned on, and receptive, which is dope. You just said something that maybe I was about to interrupt you, but I've been working on trying not to, holding myself back. So what were you saying about someone eating the Black Moor? What are you talking about?
Oh, well, I mean, the Apache story that was related to me was they didn't turn. They sent a Black Moor ahead of them in their party because they didn't like him. And I mean, he went up and he was doing nasty things. And every time they'd get to another Indian culture that he'd been through, he'd done a bunch of bad stuff and they were pissed off. But by the time they got to the Apache north of Phoenix, he got there. They're like, no, man, this guy's a spy. So they killed him and ate him. That's their story. And that was actually where the 7 cities of gold were located, is on the rim of what's called Sunset Peak there. And those pueblos still exist today, and they're in the heart of what's called the Golden Triangle, one of the richest gold-bearing ore bodies in the world. And that's where Coronado built his winter home, was on a mine they called the Apache Teardrop, or the Golden Teardrop. And he was cool with them, whatever. And then the story of where they turned and got to Zuni up the Verde Valley, that was actually altered to prevent Spain and anyone else from ever finding these mines.
So you're talking about what you're talking about is, because you mentioned the Black Moor or the Moor, that's Stephen Estevanico, or my grandfather used to call him Estevanico the Black, and he was rocking. Esteban was also the name that they would give him, but his real name was Mustafa, I believe. I could be wrong, but you know, I think I'll just share with you only because his story and Devaka's story are super important to me. I don't believe at all that Estevanico was doing anything wrong. In fact, him and Devaka, because when they were lost for 8 years in the Americas, quote unquote lost, they weren't really lost, but
yeah, right.
When they were in the Americas, they became renowned medicine men and healers. Now, the story that would have went to the Spanish, I agree, that's the story they would have told, because one of the stories, is that they ate his leg, not his entire body, at least the one that I heard, and the fact that, in fact, Estevanico cut off his leg, or with the Zuni, they cut off his leg, and that was the only way that he believed that Coronado and Fray Marcos would believe that he was dead, that the Zuni killed him, and so sent his leg back. But really, he thought of the natives as family and friends. And in fact, him and Devaka, this is something that I haven't really shared before, but I've got a bunch of proof and evidence that proves that Devaka and Estevanico were planning to revolt against the Spanish, and that they knew where many caches of Montezuma's treasure, plus all these other mines that you probably know more about than me. And they were going to even access this wealth and help the natives totally revolt against the Spanish, because they weren't down with it. Matter of fact, one of the reasons why Devaka was sent back to Spain is because he became sympathetic to the natives and was trying to stop them from doing foul shit to them. So Estevanico and Devaka would even tell the natives as they were coming, hey, just act like, you're going to see the white cross, man. Just tell them, just get a cross. And before they even show up, just act like you already converted. You've already converted, and they're not going to kill you. So I don't believe that Estevanico, because I've heard that before, where they gave him a rap, but it was all to mislead the Spanish so that they wouldn't go any further. So
that kind of rings true in a sense, because I mean, none of this to me became from any historical reference, other than the Apache themselves just telling me. And there's just I don't know what part they ate or what if they did, but that's their story. It's just when he got here, we thought he was a spy. We ate him. I asked him, "What does that make a difference?" He said, "Well, that way we could gain his secrets." And I said, "Oh, okay." But that's the story they told. But at the same time, that entire mine was completely hidden. The tale of where they turned, I've walked the whole thing, where they went north out of the Phoenix Basin and they went up and over by Tabletop Mountain or whatever, and then they went up the Verde Valley. But that's not actually where they went. They went to where Black Canyon City is. They went to the Agua Fria, and it was impassable. You couldn't go east from there. So they turned just before that, went up and over. And the original settlers of Black Canyon City actually witnessed 3 stone crosses on the hill, and that was to mark where they had turned. But if you took that turn, you could not get to the winter home and mines. So the hacienda was unbelievable what they had built in there. And it was mostly collapsed when we found it. Now it's completely collapsed. But they had the mine and the building and the quarrying and the masonry, and everything was unbelievable. And like the doorway to the hacienda was made out of blue granite. And each block was like 2 foot by 3 foot. And they all had a notch in them where they slotted together. And then they formed an arched doorway. And on each corner, they had a huge keystone. Keystone was probably 1,200 pounds. and then it had two big corner blocks. So, and the front of the building was all ornate and unbelievable stonework, and the back of the building wasn't necessarily, and it had been plastered except for the corners where they had been big rock and cut like a German mason cuts them. And when we pulled a chalice out of there, we took it to Arizona State University, and it had the seal of Coronado, but it was 1526. So it would have been carried with from a family piece. And but that whole mindset, if you turn early, even if you get all the way to Black Canyon City and see the three crosses, you would turn, and it's in 1800 to 2000 or even more, with vertical drops of 800 or 1,000 foot off that edge to get into the canyon where the hacienda is, and you can't see it from the top. So they hid this entire zone there, and it was already an ancient mine. So it would have been from the ancients, whoever the ancients were, pre-Apache.
Right.
And then, but he got in with the Apache that were there. So it wasn't a conflict. He was not in conflict. And he was not obviously loyal to Spain because they hid this entire site and then claimed...
Are you saying Coronado? Are you talking about Coronado?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What if I told you? Because I've never heard.
They said it was his winter home, so it was where he wintered. When he left the other regions, it was where he wintered.
Are we sure it wasn't De Vaca? Because 1520, Coronado didn't, if I'm not mistaken, didn't come to the area until the 1540s.
Well, yeah, sure, but the family chalice would have come from Europe, so it would have came here when he came over, and it would have been it could have been 200 years old before he brought it with him. It's a family item,
sure.
So it was a small chalice or a piece, about a third of a small chalice that was made out of porcelain, or superfine ceramics, and it had the family crest painted on it. And it was painted, each layer of paint as a ceramic overlay was on top of gold, which is really cool. So they'd put gold down, then they'd put another layer of coating, and then they'd put gold down, and then they'd refire it. And that's what they told us at ASU. But that's
because Estevanico and De Vaca, that is the time frame. That 1520 something area is the time they were there. For sure. And some of the other parties, there was only three of them. I can't remember. I always forget the last. I don't know if it was Taranto. I could be wrong. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
They went by the application of the ceramics in Europe when that technique was being used, and with the way the crest was painted on the cup, or which colors in the crest and everything. And that's what they went to go by on the date. So, but he would have apparently carried that as one of his own heirlooms. And this building wasn't like a small shack it's the largest ancient building I've ever seen, single structure, besides big pueblos and stuff like that. And it was all European, and it was just amazing. And it was at least 2 stories and a basement. So it would have been 3 total. And they had a pillar in the center made out of blue granite, but chunks.
That's interesting.
Masoned all the way up. And then it had a dual hearth fireplace that would have been on the 2nd floor. So, and then there's literally a swimming pool behind it, and the whole, it's a palace, and it's in the worst place you can ever imagine trying to get into. It's horrible.
Do we know where that blue granite came from? Did it come from the area?
Yeah, it's local. It's local to the area, yeah, but not right there. Where that's at, it's a lot of sulfides and broken up rhyolitic stuff, and other.
Because in Kanab, the place that we all call Freddy's Cave, Freddie Crystal had discovered. That was sealed with a blue granite that wasn't from the area there. Interesting. May be connected, may not be.
Yeah. Yeah, the Bradshaws in that whole area there are basically several miles of the earth flipped and then eroded down. So you've got just everything basically coming up here and there. So a lot of granite.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. Awesome. Have you heard of the Zuni's black kachina? They have a black kachina with the Zunis. Have you ever heard of that kachina?
Just that they have. I don't know any information about it.
Yeah, I feel like it is Estevanico because he was a medicine man. He was a black man to them. They're like, he was a Moor. Anyway, just wondering if you had heard anything about that. We
could probably just ask him.
Right. It'd be nice to find some of the elders who may still be, carrying on the traditions. If I imagine that they know, but
No, they
are
know.
they willing?
They know everything.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Whatever they say is
Right.
dead nuts too. If you go out and look, if they say it's 3 feet from here and then dig down, you'll find this, and you're going to find it. Doesn't matter if it's
Right.
5,000 years old, and they'll tell you how old it is, and you won't believe them. I mean, because it goes, a lot of stuff goes against, the archaeological record for who was supposed to be where and who was who, because we attribute names based on times. They were the same people going through transitions. They didn't call themselves those names. They had no idea.
Right.
The Puebloan people, and they had no idea any of these names. They were who they were. The Jovenhuit versus the Aztec, or the people of Chacoan people versus the Maya. Of course, if you go look at the DNA and a lot of the remains that came out of the Chacoan culture, they're Mayan. So everybody was everywhere. It was all interconnected.
Right.
So
Right. And I love that you said that, because that's something that I say is common sense. Come on, people, wake up. It's only us. I mean, come on. We had in early America as, current 1800s, think those guys were the only people coming over here to explore? Hell no, man. These natives were amazing at navigation and trade routes and worldwide.
Yeah,
worldwide.
They excelled beyond anybody in Europe. They know that. So what they were doing was 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, all the way down in Peru, was already more advanced, far more advanced. Their astronomical work and stuff was far more advanced than anybody even dreamed of. They still thought that the sun revolved around the planet for 2,000 years after that. So,
right. And they're just catching on, because they got satellites and computers that can do the math for them and verify certain things.
Well, that's the thing. Everything that we've achieved now just validates what they already have recorded in here or there, not just in South America or the Americas, all over the world. But it just shows you, the Romanistic Euro view of advanced culture and society obviously isn't true. So, and they know that from all over the world. Everybody else in the world's got their stories, from Australia to China to everywhere on the planet talks about former periods and former times when I'm sure we were beyond where we are now. So,
right. And can you imagine if those, whoever they are, who are in charge, would have just built from what was already told to them, where we would be today?
Yeah,
we'd be so far ahead. I really believe it's just on purpose, though. Like there's a group of those elitists, call them Rome, revived Rome, whatever we want to say. Those cats, secret societies, they know what's up. They all, they know that the oral or the myths and legend were oral history and true, but we can't let the little guy find out.
yeah. And this has been a long time they've been doing this, so it's not new. It's just another time around. That's it.
Well, that's the first I've heard of Coronado's winter home, man. I think that's pretty dope. And so this place still exists. You're able to get there and see it.
Sure. I mean, you can't take away the mine. The mines are there, and the operation was so big that there's no way to conceal it. There's, of course, the structure that we saw and stuff. I had photographs of it somewhere. It no longer is what it was. It's definitely not anything like that per se, because like the big fireplace is down, most of the pedestal it was on is down and collapsed into itself. God knows what's actually under the rubble in the basement portion. Could be pretty unbelievable. We did find a cache location as well later on, blah, blah, blah. But some of the timbers used in some of their rigging were, I don't know where they got them, because I don't know if there's ever been trees near there this large, but some of the beams were 30 inches tall, 20 inches thick, and 30 feet long. And they had to get them from someplace, and that would have had to been way up in the Bradshaw Mountains, and haul them 20, 30 miles across canyons and jagged terrain just to put them in there. So they had
giants, man.
They had a hell of an operation, and no one knows it was there. There's a handmade iron ore cart in there that probably weighs 2,000 pounds, and they had it suspended from a ceiling inside the operation. So when you say, like, is it still there? It's like you probably can't erase this place if you try. And it's unbelievable. It really is. And there's water. They're mine drains are what they are, but they have a spring-fed water source that's clean, clear water, and it fills big rock pools. And And there's native Arizona chub in there that people haven't seen for decades anywhere else. They're still there. It's
Wow.
pretty amazing.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
And so no one is that on native land? Is that federal land? What is that?
Don't know.
Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Gotta look for signs.
You're not mining it right now or anything.
No. Most everything in Arizona, fortunately, is like other places, is like BLM. And so most of that stuff, well, often you'll have to cross private strips to get into somewhere or whatever. But I mean, it is what it is. Guerrilla archaeology.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, it's that guerrilla archaeology that is making the discoveries, and then the other institutions come in afterwards and don't give us any credit and hide their findings.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Now that's not everyone. I want to make sure I don't say that's everyone of
no, and most of the people don't want to hide anything either. And I know from spending a lot of years with a lot of the higher level academics, because the work we used to do would bump and grind with state level or way at the top academics often, and from what I've seen with most of that, and then as well the developmental sciences around subsurface imaging, everything from geoseismics to whatever. I've met a lot of the original inventors and developers, and then of course I've met like the heads of the state of archaeology and whatnot. And they're on two different sides of the fence, and most of them absolutely know a lot more what's going on than anything else. But why are you going to stick your toes in that and just mess with your own career and your comfortable daily grind? There's no real incentive or motivation for them to come out of the box and be some kind of hero or anything. That's not, and who knows, if I had grown up within that system, maybe I wouldn't be as well. And I'm not trying to say hero wise, but at least someone that is bothered by the fact that we don't know. And when you sit on it when you've sat on it and seen it, worked with it, dug it up, picked it up and held it, own it, sitting in, and they tell you it doesn't exist. It's like, well, I got it in a box right there. You can't tell me it doesn't. It's right there. And then it's like, oh, well, that's a hoax. And so, well, it wasn't a hoax. I dug it up 90 feet underground, bro. It's not, so it's just kind of like that. And it's not really their fault in a sense. I think that in order for a lot to come clean, you have to almost give amnesty to everybody modern, because it really comes from an older set of values that have come down the line when they didn't know enough about the truth to feel that bad about hiding it. But now so much is being exposed that's showing it's showing what it is, and with YouTube and with a lot of the private explorers and researchers and everybody out there, hell, half of them are looking at stuff and have no clue what they're on, but a lot of the people watching those videos go, that's this and this is that, but the understanding is now becoming fluent, right? So it's starting to show a story.
Yeah.
Getting hard to hide.
Yeah. Yeah, and these guys have seen what's happened to their peers when they have decided to stand up and say it is real, it is true. They go, oh well, sorry, you no longer work here.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we went. The hardest ones, the ones that really mess with things, I guess, shake the carpet the worst. Those are what we've always tend to try to focus on. So
yeah. Let me ask you, man, do you think the Smithsonian has been covering up any discoveries in the Americas?
Sure. And not so much as like running a disinformation or counter disinformation campaign or anything blatantly. Other ones do that, right? They don't have to do that. But just conveniently not unlocking doors that have been locked for a long time. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
You don't have a room that you can't enter for 10 years because there was asbestos in it. Sorry. Like they can't afford to get that fixed, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They have asbestos abatement guys. They throw on the suits and get it handled real quick.
We'll volunteer and take care of it for them. It's like, we'll even
that's right.
Just let us in there,
Yeah, just let us in, man. My brother's got a license for asbestos abatement, man. We'll be right over.
Mm-hmm.
It's for me, it's they got there first. A lot of this stuff, they had the money, they had the people, whether that be John Wesley Powell, whether that was G.E. Kincaid, and these cats, they were funding them. They were all boots on the ground first. They got to it and they decided, hey, we got it. We're not telling no one we got it.
Right, right. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was
Yeah.
a point in time. It's been in stages. So, and it's cool because I kind of wanted to bring this up anyway because I know this is a real diverse crowd. I mean, I know they're all over the place. The guys that listen to you and me both are everywhere, man, across the gamut, and I love it.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of things, and one of them, around the turn of the century, a lot of things changed. Around 1880, and that had a lot of the stories that I've heavily researched, was Adolf Bandelier and what he came through and discovered throughout central New Mexico and all the way around, and talking to all the natives, living with the natives. Hell, he got so skinny, the guy was about to die, man, because he was just mooching. He was taking couch space. They didn't have couches, but in all the pueblos, just mooching off everybody, running around looking for J.P. Morgan and sending all these letters back on all the weird stuff. And and so, but what it tells you is around that time, around 1880, when they started to make secondary discoveries, a lot of them were made in the 1830s, and they were sent out by one of the groups, and who they ended up calling the Texans, and later on, which would have ended up turning into the KGC, or the Knights of the Golden Circle, who were the military arm of the KKK's same founder or whatever, and they were the secret branch or whatever. So they came through and did work all over the place, and people can research the KGC. Book by Roy Rausch is probably the best. But what they did was immense, and the amount of treasure, amount of gold, and everything, and all across everywhere. And that was actually why the Civil War started. The first shots were in Glorieta, New Mexico, and they were over a cache of wealth. And you can research it. The first shots of the Civil War were in Glorieta, New Mexico. There's a reason that the seat of the Confederacy was taken to Fort Union, just outside Santa Fe, and Santa Fe was considered the seat of the Confederacy for a while. All this was around the treasure. All this was around the massive amounts of gold and whatnot. So at the time, but through that period between 1830s and up to 1880s, they buried and hid. And then by the time the USGS survey came out and they did all the mapping and everything, they were in the back pocket of the ones hiding a lot of this stuff. And you'll see the early railroad development that went through, the early surveying of the nation, all that was all involved with hiding this information in these sites. And then, so we see a couple of phases. And like I said, up into the 75. So in 1974 with Bigfoot, they were shown on the Army Corps of Engineers list of species you may encounter and what to do if you do it, to their Army training guys. In 74, they were on placemats and everywhere else. And even the FBI was getting in and taking a semi-public look at hair and remains. In 75, it was a myth. It was a total myth, and we're doing a show on a myth and a legend, which was In Search Of. I loved it, but that's a counter disinformation outlet. Yeah. So it's kind of like you can see the phases. And around the turn of the century, there was a species identified of human called Homo Capensis, and they were coneheads. And then all of a sudden they came around and said, no, cradle boarding. Yeah, well, almost. You lack about 6 inches, but close.
Yes.
No, but yeah, and they would have been all forehead too. But they, but anyway, so, but you can see where they actually identified, and they wrote them down. It's Homo Capensis, and it was finding in South America and finding in France and in some of the Arab countries. And now, of course, oh no, it's cradle boarding. There was nothing. What do you mean? It's right. Actually, if you go look, it's back there. Now, something I wanted to bring up is the original movie Metropolis, which has to probably be my second favorite. That movie was chopped up, hidden, stowed away. It was supposed to be thrown away. People kept parts of it, and then it was reconstructed. And it took 2 decades to get all the parts of it, to reconstruct almost all of it. But if anyone can find it, go get a chance to see it. Watch Metropolis. You will see who runs the world, where we're at now, the whole 9 yards. And in the end, some of that you'll see Homo Capensis, and they're in charge of everything. They're the ones running the show in behind the scenes. And this was made, not long after the turn of the century. And it's the effects in it are off the chart. It's actually amazing, full robots and the whole 9 yards. And it's like, so, but anyway, go on.
Wow. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I'm just sitting here, it's not hard to not interrupt you because I'm just sitting here listening. I don't even know where to go. I mean, there are certain things. So when we talk about Bigfoot, giants, what's your what's your take on giants? Do you think there's a connection between Bigfoot and giants that have been spoken about,
No.
from every civilization? You think they're two different species? What's your
Well, how would you say this? So the giants, there were several forms of giants in recorded
yes,
history, not just one. Anywhere that there was talks, a tale of giants, there was at least a couple, and
yes,
and they were considered in most places outside Samaria and over there. They, or at least that form that they talked about, the Nephilim, would have been an offspring and a hybrid of something else. But in spite of them, there were other giants. There were already giants that weren't Nephilim or whatever, and then people have made a connection through the Nephilim to the Bigfoot and the giants. No, I don't think they're the same at all. I think Bigfoot would be closer to something like Denisovan, or Homo heidelbergensis, or or whatever. And I mean, Denisovan was Homo heidelbergensis was 8 feet. Denisovan was 10 foot. And if anyone argues that, look at the size of the skull is twice ours. The size of the teeth are twice ours. All the bones are twice ours. Well, then it's going to be twice our size. And they as well, they would have had, they say, Homo heidelbergensis anyway, would have had a vocabulary capability beyond ours, because their vocal range would have been both higher and lower. Some of these earlier types of humans had larger brain capacities than we do, and just as complicated as cerebral cortex. So how smart really were they? These guys were big guys. These were giants. A 10-foot guy is a giant. It doesn't matter what you say. If he walks up today, you would flip. A 7-foot guy looks horrendous. 8-foot looks nuts. If you take a pole and set it on top of your head that's as high as you, and look and see what 12 feet really is like, and realize that today we have Bigfoot that are 12 feet tall. And people say, 15, 18, maybe. But I've seen scaled handprints, feet print, knee prints, fist prints, and seen the beings that are 12 foot and everything matches. And you're talking 6 foot across the shoulders, 12 foot tall. I mean, they're almost as wide across, or 5 foot, whatever. They're almost as wide across shoulders as half of their height. But no, that's I don't believe it has to be a giant. I think that people hear about 3 things and then they just combine them and attribute them, and that's it. They don't factor in all the things that existed, like humans. And in the fossil record is a horrible way of looking at what existed. It's one of the worst ways of looking at what existed, because paleontologists will tell you, in most cases, only about it's estimated 1 in 1,500 species shows up in the fossil record. Fossilization is so rare. There's only been one chimpanzee fossil ever found, and that was a piece of a jaw fragment, and it's 3.5 million years old. Nothing since. I mean, look at all the billions of chimpanzees, literally billions, that existed in the last
right.
3.5 million years. And we got one piece and nothing since. If we hadn't found that, we would have no fossil record of a chimpanzee. So to think that where's the bones, where's the fossil record and all these things, we have no clue how many types of humans there were running around. All we know is what we know. We know there was at least this many. And now we're finding, wow, most of them existed together at times. 5 types of human existed overlapping periods of time. And they all show each other's genetics. So they were all getting it on, right? So how different were they culturally in their abilities? We don't have a clue who even started some of the stories we have. They could have been started by another form of human. We don't know, right? So what was a giant as compared to who? And whatnot. But it's a complicated question, but I don't think the answer is all that complicated as I made it. It's just really that there's more going on than people realize, and sometimes you can't put one in another bracket until it becomes self-evident. So we probably shouldn't be doing that. With what I've seen, at least like the Nephilim and Bigfoot, and I've been around a lot of the Bigfoot people. And they're the antithesis to every single thing we ever know about the Nephilim. Now, all we know about the Nephilim is what was written, right? That's all we know. So everything written is the antithesis of what a Bigfoot is. So why anyone ever joined those two together, I don't know, because, the Nephilim were the creators of law. They enslaved mankind through law and through order and through hyper regulation. Conquering nature was a major component in that understanding. And Bigfoots are basically exactly the opposite of that. They got nothing to do with anybody else. Don't bug me. I'm going to go sit on this rock. My family's down here. Don't mess with them. We want to eat a deer later. And that's their big deal. They're not really into going, hey, I'm going to rule the planet and conquer everybody and you're all my slaves now, so it's
Right.
Anyway, long answer to a simple question.
Yeah, no, but it's good answers and interesting ideas on all of it. For me, I know the giants around because I believe the oral history of the natives of every continent.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the native giants, resonate way more with me. In other words, I believe that giants built the pyramids just like the Aztecs say they did from the previous world, that those giants who were around built those pyramids, and whether in Egypt or Mexico or wherever.
I believe they built places like Pumapunku, the original Baalbek, not what we see today, and those places like that. I don't necessarily think that anything that's complete that we see today, I don't necessarily think that they built them, because I think everything they pretty well built was wiped clean, and then they came back. And even in South America, like it says, the giants were the first to emerge. They built like Pumapunku and a few other sites, and then the sun got a little nasty one day and burned them all off the planet. And it says they were arrogant and they came out early, so they should have heeded warnings. Thought they were badass, So but really, who knows?
Yeah. Well, I'm convinced that there are still some around, and they still got their spots, to whether they're in Middle Earth or hanging in the canyons or hanging in the forest, whether it's Bigfoot, giants, all of the above. But I'm with you. I am not I'm not a believer in evolution. I want to know though. Do you believe in evolution as the Darwinism?
Here's the deal. I don't believe there's an argument in between science and religion. So what there is manipulation that creates an argument to create sides, so no one gets a clue on what's really going on. Because I believe that there's a creator, and I believe that the consciousness of the creator and that's God, and I believe that just a simple thought creates manifested reality in a quantum system, fit science. And with that term, if there's anything thought or envisioned in a dynamic system, which this is, there's nothing in the universe that we know of that's static. Everything is in a form of movement or change. And with that understanding, it's like, well, wouldn't any being that was envisioned, conceived, or thought of also be a dynamic system? And what is evolution of a life form? It's a dynamic system. What do planets do? What do oceans do? What do mountains do? They all evolve. There's nothing in the universe that doesn't evolve. So why would that have any issue with an argument with a creator that creates an evolutionary system or a dynamic system? See, so there's no reason for the argument. It's similar to the word was in the Bible. And I've said this a few times before. So it's interesting if you go look up the word was in a concordance. In most concordance, it's not listed, even though it's in the Bible over 1,500 times. And it changes the context of everything where it's used. So there was no word was in Hebrew, and it replaced 3 words. And some concordances will show in the preface that the word was isn't explained. It was actually used to replace 3 words to condense the volume and make it smaller. Okay, but the word was replaces become, became, and becomes. And so every single word that the word was is in any of the text, you have to replace with one of those terms. And it's funny because the entire argument between science and religion based on the flood and everything else and what we see in the geologic record and the dinosaurs, paleontologic record and all that, I understand all those records, and I understand the point of that sentence in the Bible. I mean, it's the second sentence in the first paragraph. In the beginning is one thing, And then it says in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Well, that was in the beginning. Then there's a period. And it said, and the earth was dark and void of shape, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Well, replace those with the proper tense, and the earth became dark and void of shape, and darkness became upon the face of the deep. That means there was something here before. So all the things that we have before that they say is the argument to science and religion, and some religions even go so far to say, like, dinosaur bones were created by the devil to make man believe there was a world before. It says there was a world before. So people don't tend to look, I would say look deeper, but this is about as deep as an oil slick on water. Every word in the whole thing now changes. I don't believe there's an argument. I don't believe there's any difference between science and creation, evolution. I don't believe there's any difference. Darwin, I mean, come on. Yeah, he's a genius. If he wasn't a member of the Priory of Sion, we never would have heard his name. I'm telling you right now. And don't you guys get pissed at me for saying that. You know it. And because all he did was look at and notice the obvious. He noticed the obvious. He noticed how things work. We can change our genetics with a simple thought. That's known science, man, 100%. What triggers things to be better prepared next time? Now, he says, it's natural selection, just happenstance. Have you ever seen the math on that? How long it would actually take to do that based on the math, right? We wouldn't even be a bacteria yet. We would be single cell organisms at most by now. I think it's 13 billion years or something to get a single cell organism by the laws of chance. But in the same nature, we notice things changing. But I know that, animals, they become what they experience in one generation. The next generation is born better prepared. That's how we see it. People, same thing. Genes get turned on that are not active, like the gene the Sherpas inherited from the Denisovan. That's why they can live over 15,000 feet. Obviously, Denisovan did, because that gene becomes active when you live at high altitude. It's not that one survivor had the gene active. No, it's if you stay there long enough, these things start to occur and start to trigger. It's like acclimation to the universe, man. That's it. We're built to acclimate.
And that's why I don't believe in Darwinism. Essentially, it's really similar to what you're laying out. Is that infinite possibility is already within me. Whether people want to focus at a level of DNA, cells, and whatnot, or if they want to dive deeper into the invisible of consciousness, for me, the best way that I've come to understand that God, and I believe we're talking about the God beyond God, because there ain't no dude like you and me sitting there, right, in a chair somewhere. No, is mind. Unfathomable consciousness, mind, still limited. Even those words are limited to the description, but that within this infinite mind, each one of us has been a thought of that we call God.
Let me give you this. You'll love this. I think you'll get it. So like I said, it's all about as deep as an oil slick on water. You tend to dive in the lake looking for what's at the bottom, and sometimes it's just right there. If in a quantum system, okay, any single particle, no matter what particle it is, in a quantum state is infinite, because it exists in all time and space at the same time. So an infinite amount of that can be in all time and space simultaneously. How much space does that require? An infinite amount of space, because there's an infinite amount of itself in the same time and space. People don't realize that everything could be just one thing in a quantum state. Right. Now, in any major system, intelligence almost becomes a byproduct of any major, ultra complicated random system will start to self-organize. We know this stuff, and we don't understand why things self-organize, but they do. Been too many tests to show it doesn't. So if you just take the basics that we know and apply it to, everything is, it's a quantum reality, whatever, blah, 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 and there's a fabric of time, space, and everything else. All this is probably just one particle, and the awareness of that is in itself. So the moment it existed in that state, it was completely aware of all time forward, all time backwards, all reality forward and backwards. It was immediately there. in its potential. And that's where zero point energy comes from, and traveling across the stars and all that. You don't travel, you don't need propulsion. You take
Right.
less time between me and you, and I move, period. Because there's less time, that means there's less space. And
Or
that's
are we even really moving? It just appears that we're
it's
moving.
not to the other. That's the whole thing. Relativity. It's what's relative to the other thing next to it. And that's not complicated either. Um, if you take Einstein's theory and say, well, you can only go 99.9 whatever to the nth millionth on the decimal to the speed of light, but you can never achieve that to a point unless you actually take relativity and factor it in. How relative are you to your surroundings, to the universe around you, to the thing next to you? At a certain relative nature, you're no longer relative to what's next to you. It's like passing by in a frame of speed so fast you don't occupy any time between A and B. Well, that would be what they say teleporting. They say, oh yeah, well, we now figured out how to teleport things, but you can't travel faster than the speed of light. What? You just did that, or that's what made you not be in between the two places. You didn't have any time to be in between the two places. So time is relative to space itself. That's the same fabric that they talk about. So it's kind of like, well, if you drive, if you drive to the store 30 mile an hour, it takes 30 minutes, go 60 mile an hour, it takes 15. It's like, so each time you double your speed, it cuts in half, whatever. There's a point at which you're no longer relative. And that's the relative speed of the universe. Well, once you've achieved that, and as you get there, you're less relative. You're not, so there's a curve. There's a curve that they don't factor in when they do the curve about speed and versus the energy it takes to maintain, to get to that speed and maintain that speed. And it's an infinite amount of energy. They're not factoring how relative you are to your surroundings anymore. Because long before that, you would never see you go by, unless you were tremendous distance away, and so we see that. It's hilarious because they tell us in astronomy all the time, oh, this system is emitting jets of gas and energy or light or whatever, and these jets are going 100 billion light years or 100 million light years out of the center of this spinning rotational disk or black hole or whatever, and it's jetting out material. 100 million light years, okay? And it's one jet of material, and it's traveling. If you do the math on how fast they say it's moving, it's beyond the speed of light. So it's relative, right? We see it. If you were there right next to it, you probably wouldn't even see that because it wouldn't be relative to your existence, to where you are in time and space. And that's what they call being out of phase, right? So physics allows for all these things. And then yet they say, well, you can't travel that. Man, come on. You know as well as I do, once you're moving that fast and relative to the thing next to you, you start to go out of phase. Pretty soon you could go right through a planet. You didn't have enough time to even encounter the planet. It was such a millisecond in your travel that there's no time to encounter one thing to another. That's what relativity to me is. So I don't see the problem of traveling through the stars. I don't think any of it. I really do. You see, the possibility for portals and gateways and all this, and when you have the being all over the world, whether it be Melusine, which is the foundational concept of what would be the mermaid, that was the original hybrid bloodline between the serpent god and the humans and whatnot, and they're holding two pillars in the hands like this, or like Viracocha, same thing. Tiwanaku is shown with two pillars in the hand. It's the same guy. Yeah. Below his feet are a split geometric. That's the two serpent tail. So, but the two poles, that's to me, that's the dilation gateway. That's a stargate. That's a teleportation gateway. And when we have sites in the world where they have false doors, and often there's a couple holes on each side of the false door, or there's two slots on either side of the false door, that's where the two rods go that generate the field that create the dilation, so you can zoom the hell out of here. And people say, well, how would you ever do that? Like, how would you know where to go, right? Well, I could take a cup of yogurt, split a cup of yogurt in half, take half to LA, same culture, half to LA, half to New York, feed the LA culture, and the ones in New York will react with no time in between whatsoever. That's light particle physics, but biology does it automatically. So anytime you have a link or a component to another location, there's the same thing. If you open a doorway, it's tuned through that quantum ID. That bacteria or in one cup is tuned to the quantum ID of the other. There's no distance in that. So it's the same technology or the same understanding. And I see that.
And I say it's consciousness. Basically, I trust that infinite intelligence that has been doing while we think we're doing or not doing. That is, capable.
If we are all one particle, you are every rock. You're yourself.
Absolutely.
You're yourself in a billion years. You didn't exist before you existed. But once you did, you existed all time before you are now and all time after. Once you clicked into this thing and your ID started, your spark of who you are, it's now forever back and forth. And all that's within you in this time and space. So is every other human. So is every other organism. So is every rock, meteor, ball of light, piece of gas. If it's all one particle.
Everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Then that's where this knowledge comes from. Like people go, the ones that make all the big changes in the world, get it through an internal sense, whether it be Tesla or whoever it is, they get everything through an internal sense and then they find out how to do it. That
they get a download, man. They get a download.
Well, it's like people say, well, where would that information be? It's
everywhere. Yeah. And for me, God, the particle you're talking about called, in a limited way, God's substance. There's only one substance. And you're saying all this stuff, so I'm just saying a different way. Mm-hmm. There's only one substance. That substance is this infinite God substance, infinite, call it quantum, whatever we want to, we can call it all kinds of things, but it's really, as we said earlier, the unfathomable, unnameable substance that is everything that we are one with and made out of. And I have to say, because it's the only substance, we're inside, not only made of it, but we're dwelling inside of this, omnipresent.
That's why we can affect it.
Omnipotent. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the kahunas, that's how they believed. And they said, but there's a program filter to using it or you working with it or becoming part of it. And that was love. The kahuna would prevent storms and calm the volcano and do the whole thing. And they saw it as them using that infinite power, and you could only do it through love, but love would automatically kick it on. And that explains why, some 45-year-old soccer mom will flip a Toyota off her kid. It's happened.
Yes. So. Yes. I've through love, I have, stayed in this realm as this version of me and not disappeared because of love grounded me to say, no, we got some other things to do here in this realm still.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
But I love it. I love to hear all of this stuff. And I love to hear myself talking as you, through you, to me, as me. To
right.
Hear.
Isn't that the coolest thing? And then people fight and have differences and think everyone's different than everyone else. Everyone tends to think they're the only one having the thoughts they have, and the guy over there they're pissed at isn't as well. So right. I mean, we are all who we are. We all make our choices. That's our little ID in the matrix. But
we're this unique, individualized existence that we think we're having. Man, I notice it. I've noticed by practice, right? Because all the sages of the ages have, enlightened me to remember what we already came in here knowing, but we happily forget, apparently, or unhappily. And that love and that kind of sending positive energy even to people you may be having negative vibes with. Man, I've seen, when I have forgiven, one of my daily affirmations is I am friends with everyone and everything. I forgive everyone and everything, and I love everyone and everything. And that's just got that magic dissolving power of the friction and opposition. It just seems to melt it away to where those problems I thought I had with people just dissolve. And it starts with me, because who's the master of my world? Right. I'm the kingdom of my thoughts. And so it's cool. It's so simple though. That what we're talking about in the sense of just having a self-realization that we have power and control over our reality, that it seems too simple for some folks to think that the formula, that the elixir is thinking the thought, speaking the thought, feeling the thought, and then watching it happen. But
Well, I mean,
it does.
when you can talk to a glass of water and change its crystal form, it's more atomic. It's literal atomic nature in the universe just by talking to it, or set a pane of water on top of a photograph and then freeze it, and it'll replicate the image. Um, that's so. Anyone
All is
who
life.
knows about, I think basically it's the low information crowd that have been a victim of those who wanted to create a low information crowd. Really, I think that's what it is. And so they just don't know. They've not seen that. They don't know about that, and then there's other people that do. And it doesn't help when today's social sites do us a favor and show us what we're interested in, because then we never see anything but that.
Right.
Some people end up seeing 50 examples that show or declare a nature to everything. And then someone else will never see any of those because they love hockey and all they're being shown is hockey and hockey related whatnot. And so it's the way the social systems don't necessarily help this very much. We're becoming divided in what we know about, in a sense. Right. You could call it dumbing down, but
Well, and speaking from the infinite source that we all really are from, they must have purposely decided that that's the role they were going to play while they were here.
Maybe. I mean, if everything was decided, there wouldn't be any learning or growth. And so individually and understanding, it's kind of like, and a person that was in contact with an alien guy at one time in history. One of the things he told him, he asked him if you could tell humanity anything, what would it be? And he said, well, worship your deity more was one. And then the other part about that was that people tend to divide themselves from the nature of, like we're saying, of the id or whatever it is. That's why I say we're not different. We're the same damn thing. You know what I mean? And so, being they do that, it's easy to manipulate that division through intent. And people will just swing with it. And it's not their fault they do that. That's what they see and understand every day. And of course, that's where, the way information's given to us and the way we see that information. Is it weird or is it not weird? All that's programmed or set up, so.
Yeah. I want to, Chris Davis, of course, your bud, and I say my bud now too,
Part
says,
of my team.
I like to say we are all one consciousness, just experiencing everything at different angles of perception. Mm-hmm. And for sure, we're all the diamonds, different angles.
Well, you wouldn't have. It's like the other thing he told him was humans are seen, they're admired, they're pitied and admired in a sense to their culture anyway, because they don't have liars, cheaters, manipulators, thugs, war, any of these things. And in all their enlightened understanding, they don't have the understanding that can only come from that experience. And so the negativity that Earth is often exposed to gives us this chance to grow beyond what they ever could be, that they admire that we have a point of view from a situation that's so horrific. That make any sense? Because they could never achieve the understanding that comes with that. Maybe the value of a perfect system. We would never take that for granted, or see it as normal. We would actually see it as something much more grand and much more wondrous, if by comparison. So, who's to say that we sign up for these things, or that we sign up to experience whatever happens, and it's to get that. I want to get that understanding. Well, you don't know in the curriculum what they're going to teach you. If you go for a PhD, there's no way they could even show you all the curriculum, or you'd get the PhD. It's like, this is a process and it takes this long and this much varied experience and then put together, right? So that it culminates into something. So even if we signed up for the life itself, to think that we would know what would happen, we wouldn't have a way to even perceive what happens. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like I could tell you it's going to be bad. This life here, this little bracket, it's going to be real bad. I could tell you that. But if you don't know what bad is, what do you got to compare it to? You don't have a clue. You're not, you
Right.
don't know, right? So
Yeah, I've often pondered, you know, if everything was perfect and everything was, you know, just yeah, it would be boring probably to a certain degree.
well, you wouldn't learn
Um,
anything. There would be
you wouldn't,
almost no
but if
point.
you but if you already knew everything that could be known, even if you could know everything that could be known and exist and being this infinite existence, once again, and there's nothing, and don't get me wrong, because we're all, I think, in a way, on our way up, spiraling up to get back to that place that we originate from or source that we come from. But it would just be hella boring. And mysteries are so fun, and not knowing. So I'm agreeing with you, by the way, that in case that's not clear, is that I think we come here. I think we incarnate, whatever word we want to use, and we come to have the experience. And with the unknowns, there are times, but I can only speak for myself from my own experience, where I've had glimpses of the future, even when they weren't going to be good. The things that you just talked about, this shit's gonna suck right here at this point. I'm about to give you a little glimpse, vision, dream, whatever you want to call it, and then it happens later. You go, damn it, man! I wish I could have avoided this one. But I did see it was going to happen.
Well, that's part of the
so we still
filter.
get
You wouldn't learn
glimpses.
anything. We would avoid everything that we learn the most from. We would
Right,
just avoid
right.
it. We wouldn't learn anything.
Yeah,
And it's not,
yeah,
we're not here for entertainment. I think that's the key thing, is what's the difference? Learning and entertainment. Now, learning can be funner and more rewarding than any entertainment that there has ever been. And it usually
right.
is. So, because you can sit on the sidelines or you can play in the game. And basically, we're playing in the game. That's the whole thing.
Yes.
All of us are.
Right.
We're not sitting on
Yeah.
the sidelines.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. If anyone watching has any questions, put a Q in front of your question. If you got a question for Robert, we'd love to hear it. Hopefully you're enjoying this conversation. It's getting philosophical. It's getting quantified. And of course, we've touched on so many other things, but that just shows you the wealth and expansive knowledge that this man has and experience he has in this world. So love for you guys to pose any questions that you guys may have.
Yeah, and I'll say the same thing. I do have a chat window open on Streamlabs now, and if somebody has a question, I can't really review too easy on here, but I can see everything constant that's going on right now. So if you guys want to throw anything out there, do it, and put it in all caps so I can make it out a little easier without trying to read the book over here.
Yeah, and so talking, I'm into all, man. I can talk about consciousness, God, philosophy, spiritualism.
But you do like giants, huh? You do like giants, right?
Well, I like giants. I like Bigfoots. I like UFOs. I love all the stuff.
That's made by giants.
Nice. That's the arrowhead.
Yeah, basically. Arrow. In North America, these are called cores. But when they're found in other parts of the world, they're not called cores. They're obvious tools. It's just basically a big point. But yeah, we have quite a few of those. This one here is the same thing. It's normally these are about 2 inches to 4 inches long, and the size of each of these flakes out here are to scale. So all the small ones have exactly the same amount of chips out of them. Of course, these are a lot bigger than the small ones, and they don't fit because these are for your fingers. But this would be a finger, that would be a finger, and that would be a finger. And my fingers, it's way too big for my fingers. And so these are meant to be held in your fingers like this, 2 to 4 inches, and it's a scraper. And it's interesting because every single cleave on the entire thing is the same as the little ones. These are just big. Wow. Now, these didn't come from random places. These came from
some mounds.
They came from piles of tools. There was piles of these, piles of these, piles of these. These are like a surface plane. That's kind of like a surface plane. Anyway, and just the front edges work. The bottom's completely flat and it's war. But the point is that this would have been maybe a trade center or something like that or whatever, because it was just, they're still to this day, they're still there. They're all surrounded by dinosaur bone, which is cool. But there's
Right.
piles of these tools, and they're, every single one of them is scale, that same scale larger than the normal editions would be if you went and found them amongst normal people. So
Right.
whose were those? Because they don't work for us. None of those really do their thing for us. I guess you could do heavy woodworking or something with them, but really they're actually chip for chip identical renditions of the smaller pieces that we see every day. Yeah.
Right. Nice. Nice. Yeah, we've made some discoveries of very I mean some stuff that the people had to be 8-9 feet tall just to even
yeah.
wield some of these things,
Mhm.
dude. You know, whether they were their clubs, axes, or whatever tools they were using them for. It's just it's in even in the Kanab Museum. We believe, you know, I of course wasn't there when the giant was there, but we believe that we have a giant spoon, like no bullshit. Like it is a giant ass spoon that we found with the giants that we found in Johnson Canyon. And it happens to be, you know, in the Kanab Museum. So
Wow.
yeah, I
That's
love it just
cool.
because, you know, it falls in line with the oral tradition or the oral history where, you know, today, whatever standard academia has been trying to say they didn't exist, they don't exist, or foo-fooing all of those discoveries. So
Hmm.
that's why I like it so much. And, you know, and once again, to me, it makes a lot more sense that giants, with their technology and even the natives too. I don't want to take it away from them. The natives were intelligent enough and far superior, like we've already said, to be able to engineer and figure out whether through sound and frequency and vibration
Hmm.
to levitate and do all the things that needed to be done to create these megalithic structures. But it fits far better for me than saying some little gray dudes came down in a spaceship and did it, you know,
Could
for
have been
no
all the
reason.
above. I mean, it could
Right.
have been all the above. I don't even know why we divide it. The time is a big thing, man. Over a long period of time, a whole lot of things can happen, and it tends to be that way. You know, this is a big world. It's in a pretty good sized solar system. We're an awful big galaxy and an awful big universe. So, and there's been a lot of time. So the simple chances, like what we think is, you know, are we being visited or whatever? Well, probably, but not only if someone says, oh, there was a landing here, we've been visited. Well, we've probably been visited then if once, then thousands and thousands of times would be the given factor, because there's been too much time, and where everything is, and how much and whatnot there is, and the chances and stuff. So the average is, you know, you couldn't. It's either they're out there, or or they're not at all. And if they're out there, then they've been here and everywhere else, because there's just been too much time. We're
Right.
looking at planets with biosignatures. We're this little, I would say we're about, really, as a civilization, 150 years old. People say, oh no, we're a civilization for 6,000 years. Not really. Um, because we were still using, everything was still manual labor made from items of the earth, nothing more. Just because we made a stick in this shape versus a stick in that shape and melted a rock, we really didn't do a whole lot. Metal and all that, they were just shapes of melted rocks and carved sticks. Nothing. Now, when we got into plastics, when we got into things like this, they say that any culture that can blow glass and pull wire can go to the moon. You don't have to be any more advanced than that to go to the moon. Okay, so really, if you think about where we were with wagon technology, and then the first change to an automobile or a steam powered engine or anything like that, to where we are now compared to 6,000 years, no, we just started, just right now. The whole 6,000 before was just what people do. They've probably done that for the last 150,000 years. But what we're doing now is different, right? So we can attribute that everything out there, anything out, there's no reason to think it would take anybody else any longer than that. And if we didn't have the type of societal views, issues, control, interests, and agendas, you could do this whole thing in 25 years. From a wagon wheel to star travel in 25 years. And I only say that because really, if you look at the developmental chunks, that's how many have actually been developmental. Everything else has been held by societies, governments, kings. It's their interest. If one kingdom had the only thing they wanted to do is develop science, and the king, that's all he wanted was just science and just to go further, and there was nobody to stop him, and he had unlimited resources, 25 years. We've been here walking for a long time. So I think just between us and everything out there, man, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any differences. I think that we may not even be from here. You know, if you factor in the reality of everything without any type of bias at all, just take the reality of what we know and then what we've been told throughout our historical renditions and things, then you can assume that we've not just been helped by a culture and they were called so and so. We've probably been helped and given advice and maybe even screwed up by dozens and dozens and dozens of who knows what from who knows where. And, you know, we're a little blue biologic marble in this big old, and there's not a lot of those by a ratio of everything else. And our little blue marble's kind of way out in the middle of nowhere as compared to everything else. Probably a pretty special place to have a little ball of biology, all right, where it's kicking over there and you can hang out on the beach if you can handle the pressure and the sun or whatever. You know, I mean, really, I mean, so I think that I think Earth in particular is probably more likely to have had many visits with many agendas over a long period of time.
Yeah, and for me, I think it's interdimensional, multidimensional. There's no doubt about it. You know, even with our thoughts, they're in another dimension. We don't see them in this dimension, but they're happening, right? Mm-hmm. I'm having them, you're having them, and they're not floating by us to where we can see them. And dreams and it being an experiencer myself, as you said, you have been since a child. They're popping in from somewhere, man, and it's not necessarily from other planets. And if they are from other planets, I believe they're just simply popping in through consciousness and that type of technology.
It could be from here. You know, they could be from here. They could be from a previous planet in our solar system. They could be from here and us be from a previous planet in the solar system. We could be from way out there. They could be from way out there, or any and all combinations of the above.
Right. Or these stories of Middle Earth and this exactly what you discussed. Yeah. These guys, having the technology for eons or thousands of years.
Let me ask you this. So they talk about subterranean cultures and everyone's, oh my gosh, how unlikely is that and this and this. If you were spacefaring at all, you're a subterranean culture if you're going anywhere and hanging out. Because almost everywhere requires protection that you go. And the way to do that is to get inside the object you're visiting. We're going to do it when we go to the moon. We're going to cover our first spacecraft, whatever we drop there, with regolith. We're going to bury it. It's going to be underground because to protect it and whatnot and everything else. So that's kind of the default way of going out there. Like the big rock and the ancient ways of moving big rock and making seamless deals. Well, if you had atmospheric pressure changes, you have to be able to build like that. And if you're going to build on other worlds, you're not going to have mortar and have water and those other things. But if you can cut and mason rock where it's airtight, you can build anywhere in the universe, basically, because with enough rock, you have protection. So it's to me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I mean, and that's the other thing about like stargates and doorways and things, and they think it might be simple. Yeah, to some. I mean, has anyone ever thought about what would happen if you opened a stargate 6 inches in diameter to Mars? Do you know what happened? Everything you knew and saw would get sucked through that 6-inch hole. You wouldn't be standing there at a gateway to a place with that much different, just an atmospheric pressure. So to me, you may need monuments and structures that are built to handle that type of change, depending on where you're going. You might have to have a hell of a lot of rock around you to take the atmospheric pressure of where you're coming from.
Unless there's a field, this
Yeah.
field that is magic. I'll say magically, but I'm sure there's some science behind it.
Mhm.
There always is, but magically just has it cool for us to walk
Well,
through
did
one
you
to the
know,
other.
atmospherically, pressure wise, you could walk around on the moon with no spacesuit? It would just take a long time to acclimate to that pressure or negative pressure. So if you were to travel to Mars, let's say you couldn't go outside, you couldn't get an ambient environment on other worlds unless you had time to adjust. And it's interesting to me that there's chambers large enough, big enough to be pressure chambers or vacuum chambers that someone could come to here, be in there and valve it and let pressure in and acclimate that person. And I've even seen a few things in history, like when the gods would come and then they would make everyone go through a whole big ritual and use sulfur and sulfur smoke in Egypt before they were allowed to see or get near the god or whatever. Well, that's one of the ways you sterilize for bacteria and pathogens and all that is sulfur smoke. So, and they do that to heal you when they don't know what the hell's killing you and you're about to go down from something crazy in your body. They'll jack you up with pure sulfur. There's just a lot of commonalities, a lot of things to think about that in common sense, when we think, oh, they just walked out of a doorway here and walked into here. Well, and then some people point out you could never, they could never do that because of pressure changes and because of, well, you could if you had facilities built where you're going that you could acclimate to or be inside of on that other planet. You know what I mean? Without having to be in the
Yep.
atmosphere. So,
Yeah. All right, we just had a question come across the desk. By the way, I Snot and Price Productions. Yo, we are in here. Yes, you are. Right on. So I Snot has a question. Do you, Robert, have any experience finding any Knights Templar evidence?
yeah, a lot actually. Here in New Mexico, we have quite a bit. You can even do some simple Google searches about some of the things that have been found in northern New Mexico. Monuments with all Knights Templar iconography and things. And then we've, of course, found a lot of Templar iconography here. And, you can research the ruins of Abo, Quarai, and Gran Quivera. And none of those were built like the way Native Americans build them. They were all built the way the French and other Europeans built them. And one of them is even in the shape of a cross. And Abo used to have a large granite Maltese cross inside the building and that was actually recorded in the 1830s and later 1850s. And when Bandelier got there, purposefully went and looked for it for J.P. Morgan. By 1880, it had been removed. Somebody had already taken it to hide this connection. So yeah, we've actually have a lot of evidence of the Knights Templar here. And this valley that I'm in right now was prolific for them and many others. There's something special about here to them. So.
Do you think the KGC is really modern day Knights Templar?
Oh no, I mean not really, because they were their own wing and their own arm. They do their own thing. So there's lots of the Knights of whatever, Knights Malta, the Knights of Columbus, the Knights whatever. The Knights Templar were not basically any of those in per se. They are them, but there was all types of spin-offs and all types of other beliefs, and people took it their own way. And just like you have the Masons of today, and you have the Scottish Rite and the other side, they're not.
Right.
They're not all together. And I think the KGC were they were basically the arm of the world elite at the time. And
Of the Americas or Europe
the
or
globe, yeah, Europe,
okay.
the globe. So Austria, Belgium. And they still are in power. But it also combines with the Jesuits and everybody else as well. So it's not just one group. They're all doing their own thing, but they're all aware of each other. They're all aware of their own operations, and they're all connected in so much as by a global order that's not so formal between the groups. In other words, they're not the same group, but yeah, they're all kind of working on the same end. How would you say that? Because the KGC, they had more gold than anybody could fathom. But it wasn't theirs either because they got it because the Jesuits had put away more gold than anyone could fathom. But it wasn't theirs, because before that, the Aztecs and everybody also put away more gold than we could fathom. And it's before that, the early Celts and the Welsh, and then the people from Carthage and Etruscans and them all the way back to 800 BC were putting a more wealth than you can imagine. So the KGC knew of this, and they were the arm of the European branches to come over here, find it, move it, stash it, prop up the form of government that they wanted under a certain form of change. And then they were actually doing their own thing, very much like the Jesuits did. So yeah, they came over here for Spain. They weren't Spanish. They weren't Portuguese. They came over here for themselves. But Spain couldn't get here without them, because they didn't have anyone of that intellect or anybody to sail them, so they got the Portuguese. So it's kind of like the Jesuits were not loyal to Spain. They were never loyal to the king. And then you put them in charge of every single operation you've got. They find more gold in a year than you've got in everywhere in Europe. And they're not telling anybody. You know, they're going to start their own order. So it's kind of like who's involved with who, you know? So when we talk about the KGC being, sure, it's a remnant divisionary arm of a group of people who had power at one time, but they're not of the Templars. No, they're not, because they do a whole different thing. It was nothing for the KGC to wipe out 1,000 innocent people. If you wanted to hide something, no big deal. They didn't care. Didn't bother them a bit. And the Templars didn't quite go by that belief system where they just, oh, he saw us, go kill him. You know, I mean, it was not quite like that. The KGC were like that.
I want to say this real quick. Price Production says, I'm in New Mexico too. If you ever need any help, Robert, let them know.
Yeah, well, reach out to us, because, you know, sometimes we do. And then you can
tell people how, you know, on my end, of course, your people can know how to contact you. Tell people how to contact you.
Yeah. So on YouTube, you can reach out through there. Of course, you can always comment and look at anything on there. And that's KX, Kryder Exploration. The Kryder's Kryder. You can find us through Kryder Exploration. You can Google it. You can find us on Facebook. We're kind of all over the place, but we don't have big presence outside of Facebook and YouTube for the most part. But, you know, or you can write me at explore_it_all@hotmail.com.
There you go. And if anyone needs that info again, rewind or hit me up, and I'll be happy to connect you with Robert. So who do you think the Jesuits were loyal to?
Well, like most orders, to themselves and their own interests. I mean, sure,
they had a power structure.
They justified it, and there was a lot of glory within those guys too, man. A lot of them did some pretty wild stuff that was pretty glorious. They weren't all bad guys. A lot of them were wonderful guys. As today, same thing. A lot of them were wonderful guys, and a lot of them are dirtbags. And so, where their loyalties were usually to their order, at least on in the world anyway. Many attributed their loyalty to God, or God through Jesus, or whatever. Many did, but weren't. So, you know, I know they were loyal to their own order. Beyond that, who knows, you know.
Right. The Vatican? Do you think they were loyal to the Vatican?
No.
No? You don't think that they were in cahoots together? At no levels?
Everybody's in cahoots together.
And all the kings of the world.
They still are world leaders today. Of course. We have to cooperate with ones we feel like are dirtbags. You have to do it, because that's what being political is, or being diplomatic is working around your differences so you can both find a way to benefit and not annihilate each other. And they've all been doing this. You know, it doesn't always benefit you to go try to wipe out your little enemy or adversary. Sometimes it benefits you to leave him over there, you know, because maybe a bigger problem will come along if I get rid of him. So, yeah, I think all of them are playing against each other. Now, not to say that the Black Pope isn't the head Jesuit, right? But even their own priests were doing stuff over here. They weren't telling their own order. A lot of them became like LaRue, Padre LaRue. They became loyal to their own people over here. They got a following, and they were good guys, and they didn't want to be part of it. So like LaRue, and get chased around till you get killed. But what he did was off the charts. You know, but he did that with dedicated followers and not with slaves. So, and then you, of course, you have the Jesuits like in Taos, who were, they just saw a human being as someone that would live, 2 to 4 weeks in a mine, and they liked kids because they lived 6 to 9 weeks in a mine, and that's how fast they went through people. So, you had the whole gamut of who they were and what they were doing, but they were all loyal to starting their own order in their new world. And many people claim that's what America is that Jesuit new order. So,
yeah, somebody's new order for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They're all they've been, and some of the comments that you made are what I call common sense. All these diplomatic relations that we have today, it was no different back in ancient times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. Those over here were already having diplomatic relations.
It was never lost.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, man.
But it's just like the British. No offense to anybody from Britain. I haven't got enough problem with any individuals, but you'll have to notice throughout time that nothing, for a long time, nothing was actually discovered until it was witnessed by someone from London or England or whatever, period. They'd say, well, the locals have always known about it, but it wasn't discovered until, well, no, it was discovered 40,000 years ago when the first guy fell in the cave, dude. That's when it was discovered. You found out about it then, but that's how. So yeah, the whole thing is like, is anything really hidden? No, somebody knows about most of it. Yeah.
My buddy Roger from Re-Indigenizing Minds cracks me up because he says, "Man, they didn't discover us; we discovered them. We were traveling, and we were already traveling. We have native routes, our routes from all over the world. We discovered them, and they didn't discover us.
That's right.
Which is awesome. I want to make sure to say what's up to Taylor Mayhew. This was earlier, and I forgot to just say thanks for joining us.
Taylor is actually a member. Chris Davis and Taylor both are members of KX. Taylor for quite some time now.
Okay.
Taylor became really prolific at reading monuments based on some early instruction and ran with it. Did pretty amazing. Really off the wall ancient stuff. And then he's the one that's co-developing our new geo-imaging devices and software. And so him and I are the one together that are doing the development.
Okay, yeah, because it was earlier in the thing, and I skipped over it. I had meant to say it, but then it went away, and I said, and then it popped in my mind. Said there was someone I forgot to say hi to. Louisa says you guys are appreciate for what you do. Keep living the dream. Stay on the hunt. Find those treasures and track signs and symbols. Keep up the great work. And then she says, did he answer the question about the metal detector app? We're just about to get into that because we're crossing over since he just mentioned Taylor and they're working on it. Talk to me about the progress. First, set it up for those who may not know what the heck we're talking about, but you have created a device for your metal detector that provides some 3D imaging.
Yeah, so it goes a little beyond that. What everybody who's ever pretty well had a metal detector, which is, I guess there's about 40 million of them still in existence right now, based on my research, has always wanted the same thing, and that's to be able to see in the ground. And metal detectors are what they are, right? And being able to see in the ground, get a comprehensive look at what's beneath your feet has always been out of the reach of the average user. It's always been, thousands of dollars and to hire technicians and to bring in exotic equipment and whatnot to be able to take care of these things. Yet there's a way, I figured a long time ago, if we could do this, we could do that, we could actually use the metal detectors to do subsurface imaging. And a lot of it, the reason that really pushed me forward into the idea was trying to get my imaging equipment from a company to work who didn't keep up their software. And so it basically made a perfectly good geo-imaging unit a $12,000 paperweight. And so I wanted to find a way to make that unit work, and it put out an audio tone. So we used AI development, one of them was the same one they built CERN with. and they're using it CERN to do their work there. And we used a couple others. We're still doing it to develop software that can interpret the sound coming off a metal detector into geo-imaging data, let's say. And so through this, you can take not just metal detectors, but a 2-box or magnetometer, anything that will basically give you an audio signal and turn that into 3D mapping of what's beneath the ground. Now, we released beta software so far. I think we only have like one more spot open for that. And we're about to finalize the stuff for the first phase of this. But people are having a lot of interesting results, and then we also use AI in our grid form. So we show grids of amplitude and the grid of frequency, and then we have AI that blends those together and helps point out linear features and things. And it will learn. It actually has a label in there that's blank when you open it right now because we haven't gone full tilt, but it is capable of identifying objects and then telling you what those objects are to the most. Now, that's just the software. And then now we've also built a device called I got one right here. So we're actually pretty far along. This is a Geoto 3D black box. Now, what's inside this box is a full 32-bit computer that runs all the software and the AI, forms a wireless connection to your phone or laptop. It has a 6-axis gyro and accelerometer and a 99-channel GPS, high accuracy GPS. So all this works together so that you tell it in your software, you open that up and look at it in your laptop, and you plug your metal detector into that, mount that on the metal detector. And then when you open it, you tell it like how many inches that box is from the detector coil. Then it knows where that detector coil is in 3D space. And so with this, instead of being a flat mapping and looking down, which is awesome, right? This is being set to track it like a 3D scanner or when you're doing photogrammetry. So the more you move it around, the more detail it gathers and builds the image. And this will be able, so imagine going in a cave like now and using LiDAR and doing the LiDAR image of the inside of the cave, and you can bring it up and see the whole cave in 3D. But instead of just seeing that, now I see 50 or 100 feet into the walls, floors, and ceilings all the way around it. And having AI interpret all that movement, timing. So it has a kind of a quantum feature. So atomic fields distort time space a little bitty bit. And that is how our AI is going and is basically trying to work now, but we don't give it as much information as it needs right now. But that's what it's going to do, and it already functions. So it's looking at the quantum reality as this happens, because it knows what it's putting out. And as we teach it, and it can look at things from different angles, it knows what it's getting back and how it's all been altered. And it believes that we'll be able to analyze the mineral crust on items, not just show them and look at them and even tell their age, how long they've been buried without ever digging them up. And so it's already the point where the basic stuff I use to image nails and things to the millimeter, and it was showing me the magnetic field of the nail to the millimeter and stuff like that. So it's getting there. We're pushing pretty hard.
So I was going to say, what do you think a release? You're going to have a 1.0 release at some point. You got a roadmap?
Yeah, we do. Matter of fact, the only thing that's holding us up right now is security features in the software itself. And this stuff will never look or send data out. There's no link to the internet, anything like that. So once it's in the system or in this box, you can get to it, but nothing else can. Like a lot of people are scared their information, and most other companies do get data and collect, like OKM do collect data. It does link back up like your drone or whatever and download data. And this stuff will never do that. So you don't have to worry about that.
GPS locations and whatnot.
All that. Yeah. So we'll actually have it where you can shut all the GPS off, but this works just between you and your unit. Now, as far as the release date, as I said, we're only doing the security right now and trying to set up where people can get the software itself. Right now, it's just for a laptop. We haven't converted it to an app because you actually have to build it from the ground up. And with all the AI working and the way our data and our data sets work, converting that to a phone app is going to be down the line a little bit. But like I said, we've already got the black boxes already along the line and things. So we're looking probably, hopefully, a couple weeks, maybe a month. If we're on the very tail end of those features right now, and then it's got to be, building the platform so people can get it. So, and we're trying to do the highest forms of security known to man right now. So we're doing blockchain, NFT, and all that stuff, so that so we can ID a computer once when you log into us, and then we'll know that computer forever, no matter where you try to log in. If you need to fix the software, update it, re-download whatever, and that'll be stored in a blockchain. So there's no way to infiltrate the system and get to the software or anything like that. So
so it's not locked into any hardware like NIC cards or none of that stuff in the computer. It is straight up you're doing blockchain just like for digital currency nowadays.
Yeah, that's going to be how it's ID'd to the computer itself. So it's going to be extremely secure on that end. And so we're not limiting like how many downloads. If you wreck your computer and need to fix your computer or whatever, a lot of companies will just sell you so many license keys or whatever. And that's one of my biggest bitches with OKM. I went 10 years without working unit, and then they didn't update the software anyway. So, and I love OKM. I got nothing bad to say about their equipment and stuff. I mean, I've done amazing things with it. But we wanted to solve that issue. So if you purchase the software once, that computer for in infinity can log back in and download that software again. So it doesn't matter how many times it crashes or whatever. We're not going to try to nail you over and over and over. And then, and then as well, the updating, and then we're going to be giving online feature that you can log in with the software. It'll be secure. And then AI, much farther beyond the AI that's in the program, can work on your stuff if you want it to. That'll be a feature we're going to do that's coming. Hopefully. I mean, these things all take a lot of time. We've not been doing this very long. We put our first versions out for beta testing in less than 30 days. And so, we're trying to move as quick as we can, but
well, I'm a big fan of OKM. Obviously I got a C4. I love it. And, I've been putting it through the test, but this sounds like an amazing another alternative or another tool. And it sounds like you're going to be introducing this for making it way more affordable, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I'm using a Rover C1 that even Germany said they didn't even have the software for it anymore. And I go put it on magnetometer, plug it in, boom, we're scanning.
And you're in business.
So it takes all this out-of-date equipment and brings it up to speed. So
I was just going to say, so you've got a solution for those people who made those investments in their previous products.
And actually
previous generations.
Right. And over that shoulder right there are these rods sticking up right there. That is a new pulse induction machine that's just coming to the market, built with American electronics. The housing and the rods, or the housing is American. The rods that come with it are carbon fiber from China, but the internal guts and everything. Now that's a new type of pulse induction which uses artificial intelligence. We are getting together with this company. It's called the Octa 6000, and we will be providing our software with them as the default software for that equipment. And that machine back there is off the charts. That thing's nuts. And I just got it for testing. I'll be putting out some videos of its use for them and for us as well. And we're just working with it right now. Hopefully I can get the company to redo their firmware at some point. If they will, we can tell them how to show that data with their software so that it directly goes into ours, and we could do things that are, it's going to be unbelievable anyway, what it can map, but with a black box on it. But, if they were talking to each other tooth and nail, that's where we get being able to take a backfilled room with a rock walls filled with sand with a ceramic vase in the middle and be able to look at the crust on the vase and tell you where it's in the room and all that kind of stuff.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited about what you're working on. I'm excited about the future of AI. I know there's some people who aren't too excited about that, but when it comes to some of these tools and technologies, man, I just think it's game changer. It's really changing the game for us, because what options did we have before stuff like this?
Right.
We were forced to dig forever, and you could be off by 12 inches. You could be off by 12, and you're missing a target.
Yeah.
When this technology and can pinpoint it, and then what about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, man? Hopefully much sooner than that. But
yeah, on the drawing table we have actually the whole basically building blocks known to us right now to be able to basically replicate Star Trek scanners. So be able
That's
to look at a building from 1,000 feet away and see the structural design, the architectural features in the building, look at its inventory, look at the people in the building, the whole 9 yards. And so we know how to do it, but the FCC is probably not going to like it when we put it together. So
I was just going to ask you, can you scan bodies, Dr. McCoy? Can you do that as well? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, like
not?
the pulse induction behind me is 5 watt. That's the limit, and we have to be able to run one megahertz to 1 gigahertz at 100 watts to be able to achieve that. But like I said, we can do it with just broadcasting those frequency. With that, we can actually do all that. So we're already got this. Part of that program is in our software right now. That's the beta release. Part of that, thinking part of that is already in the software. So it's just waiting for info.
That's dope. Let's see. What is yay, whoop whoop. Louisa says Price Productions. Yeah, Price is right. Be sure to give us thumbs up and the video thumbs up so we can get the
now you say that and someone was just letting me know. Long-time listener of mine said our like button is disabled on our feed on YouTube.
Really? Yeah. Well, look at that.
But that's not uncommon for us at all, man.
They're like, we can't have these guys spreading like
they kicked
a good
us,
virus.
Yeah, they kicked us from 30,000 views of video down to about 500. And literally just because depends on what we're talking about. Start talking about the wrong thing, and they're like, no.
But
so they're kicking our ass right now. So we gained. I've got 10,000 subscribers, and I watch the number. If we gain 12, we lose 10, and then over the next couple of days, we'll lose 2 more, and then maybe 2 more. So it's kind of like we have to really fly for that number to increase and stick. So they just take them away as fast as we get them. I've had people write in, more than one person, but one guy said, man, 14 times. He said before this time, he had to resubscribe. Every single time he goes back, he's been unsubscribed again. So
yeah, and I've had people tell me they've commented, try to reach out to me, and it gets deleted. I go, well, I haven't seen it. They go, no, we've done it several times, and it disappears. Mm-hmm. So it disappears from there, and whatever.
One of my first live streams when I was using, God knows what I was using to live stream. It was so horrible. But we were just getting it successful, and I was trying to figure out my audio, and I couldn't get my audio up. And someone, before I got my audio to work, dropped an F-bomb. You heard shuffling, and they said, oh, and dropped an F-bomb. And then you heard the background hiss, and the white noise shut off. Somebody had an open mic, was on my feed, that they could talk on it, literally, and before I ever said a word. And then we started, and I what in the hell was that? I said, people, that was not me. That wasn't me. So, yeah. And then one time, this is way back in the 90s, but it's funny as hell. What was the quote? There was a website I was trying to get into, and I was just sitting there hanging out, whatever. And it wouldn't load, and I just kept hitting load, and it'd go error, and I kept hitting load, it'd go error, I kept hitting load. And I was just sitting there doing that, looking at something else, just being dumb. And all of a sudden, my screen turned white, and it said, "File not found, dude," with an exclamation point. like I'm getting tired of this, dude. Knock it off. And it wasn't like from the internet or anything else. It was just literally took over my screen and wrote, "File not found, dude." Yeah, so
it was your assigned handler, dude. Your invisible handler. Mm-hmm. Price Production said YouTube is big tech, and they are always watching. Oh, always. Yeah. Now they got their AI bots watching, so we're just gonna let the AI bots know. Right now, AI bots, you are going to open the doorways, the floodgates, and Robert and my stream are getting everywhere. You really want to help us get this info out. Things have changed.
Well,
So
Bing
there you
AI, I don't know about Google AI because they own this, but Bing AI likes me. So,
go.
I don't know what Google AI doesn't like me. I'm a good guy. I like, I even like AI.
You got some friends at Microsoft, dude. There's some
Yeah.
people at Microsoft who like you.
Yeah, I got AI
You know?
buddies, man. Yeah, Copilot's my bud. And it tells me I can't remember, right? It tells me all the time, I say, can you remember? And no, I don't have the ability to remember. And it'll go, how you doing, Rob? It's like, how'd you remember my name? Oh, well, I can remember a little bit. And it'll say, how is anything going on in the world of exploration? How do you know I'm doing exploration, bro? It's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, you can't remember anything. Tell me another one, So
That's it. That's it. All kinds of interesting things. I just crack up. Sometimes, because they call, and this from programming, they call them daemons or demons or tomes or tombs, and all kinds of little things that make you go, man, who is really working this magic behind the scenes within the computers and all of the above. So it's all black magic.
Yeah, and I want to say everybody, thank you for all you guys that are in our chat room tonight too. So pretty cool to see everyone in here. I can't go through all the names; it'd be kind of disrespectful to Dan's show too. But I just want to say thank you everybody on both ends that's watching. There's a lot of conversation going on over here. I glance at it every once in a while. It's pretty enjoyable. But no real questions.
Right on,
I don't see any questions in caps. So yeah. So if anybody has a question, make sure you shoot it out there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You have something there?
No, go ahead. Yeah.
So discovery wise, it's been winter time. Are you planning any expeditions anytime soon?
Yeah, I've been going out doing work on some of the treasure stuff because I took a break from that and did the Bigfoot thing, and I was still totally down on that, but we achieved what we set out to achieve with the Bigfoot Enigma. Now I'm not gonna give up studying the family units that I was hanging around, and some of the quests, some of the things we didn't get to yet, we're gonna go get to, like the lodge and kill zone and stuff like that. That's still gonna be in the future. But yeah, so we've been doing a little bit of the treasure thing through the winter and posted a little bit of stuff. Kind of got an eye in the sky nowadays, and got some targets on the ground to go look at that should be fruitful, once they're nailed down. But yeah, and then got a couple of speaking arrangements this year. Not too many yet. Nebraska and of course Moon Lake, and I don't think we're going to do Phenomicon. I think they're going to put the doctor back in.
Gotcha.
The misinformation doc or whatever. But anyway, do as you do. We presented what we presented, so it knocked the world sideways up there last time, and I think we're good. If they want to have me, I think it'd be really neat, but I don't know if they will or not. But we've got some other stuff set up already that's going to be outlandish, especially once I get this tech and all this going. So here in the next couple of weeks, we should see the pulse induction machine out and getting it hooked up with software and putting it on some really cool sites. So.
And when you talk about eyes to the sky, are you talking about the satellite lidar that it seems like people are able to tap into, or are you talking about something else? Talking about UFOs? You talking about satellites?
No, but lidar is good if you want to look on the ground, whatever. That's cool. So they use nuclear magnetic resonance there's actually several names for it, atomic harmonics and whatever. It's still the same thing. It's the atomic nucleus. It's the resonance of the atomic nucleus. So all materials have a resonant frequency, and you can map those resonant frequencies, and you can actually look at those kind of in a quantum way, because you can see right through. It doesn't matter what's in between you and that once you create a phase lock loop with an element, and that's the technology that we're gaining access to. So we can look elemental specific.
Wow.
With that. Yeah. So it's pretty advanced stuff. A lot of people don't understand it. It seems like magic. But it is, right there in Utah, Charles Christensen, he's one of the early inventors of what they called H3 tech. It could find people, it could find whatever. So anything that you take a sample of, it can create a phase lock loop with that and find it.
Wow.
Yeah, and it uses biointerface, so the user, similar to an RF meter, a tri-field meter. Everyone holds them wrong. They don't realize they are part of the machine. You're supposed to hold it in your hand like this with a thumb and forefinger, because then you create, and then the field from that off your body is how it works. And so
Yeah.
people think, oh, a biointerface with electronics, that's weird. Man, that's how some of these meters already work. So, but that's how his worked as well. It uses the bio nature of the field. So even right down to the intent of the person. And, that goes back to the black box that was patented under von Reich way back when he built the device that would kill insects at a distance by putting poison in his finger on a pad. And that got a U.S. patent because it actually worked. But that's the end sum of that stuff. But
Nice. We got Ice Knot's got a question. Do you have any comment on David Pilatus Bigfoot DNA evidence?
Exactly. What now? What was that?
Do you have any comment on David Pilatus's Bigfoot DNA evidence?
I didn't know David Pilates had any Bigfoot DNA evidence. Because as far as I know, I've met David. Seems like a pretty good guy. But I've never heard him even actually say Bigfoot was responsible for what he researches. Of course, he's been pulled into the Bigfoot world largely, but I wasn't aware he had any DNA evidence.
And David's the guy that covers the missing 411 or all the people missing in national parks, right? Yeah. I believe Ice Knot has been telling me to get a hold of him. Ice Knot, should I just reach out to him through his YouTube page, send him a message? I did pull it up, so I need to do that. I keep telling you I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Price Productions just reminded me I'm supposed to say Dior bags. Have you seen any Dior bags recently?
Dior bags? No, not the.
Well, that.
What do they mean by Dior bags?
Well, that TikTok and a whole bunch of other places has started to filter and remove, what we used to call.
Really? All right. So we call them Dior bags now?
Yes, that is a code for that. And apparently then they don't, so the orbs and the UFOs don't get filtered or blocked and whatnot. So
no, I've seen them since I was a little kid. So even on the night when I was born, they were taking me back to the house. We lived on a mountain, and they saw 2 red lights bouncing all over the mountain. And then I think the earliest memory I have, I don't remember seeing the craft, but I remember all the family. My mom said I was 11 months old, but they had me on the kitchen table, and this is up at the family ranch during the reunion or whatever in high mountains in New Mexico.
Force feeding you broccoli?
Yeah, no. Probably. And but
that's why you don't like broccoli.
Yeah, right. But I guess one landed in the valley there, and the whole family was going ballistic. And I remember that occurring even at 11 months. And then the first one I remember seeing, I came up missing for a few hours one afternoon, and then when my sister found me, she found me standing in a field of what they call foxtails in California, but it's grass about 30 inches high, 36 inches high, and it has, like wheat. It's like wheat, whatever.
Oh yeah.
And
we call them foxtails.
Yeah, but the big ones, right, with the big heads on them.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was standing in those when she found me. Was in a vacant lot full of those, and just my head sticking out. And I was looking up, and she ran over and looked up at what I was looking at, and there was a craft, maybe 150 feet up. And I remember staring. I don't remember anything how I got to there, but I remember staring up and looking at it. And then about a year later, saw one that went over that looked kind of like an Apollo moon rocket, I guess. It was long, cylindrical, white. It had a black front end with radiating and a pulse at the front, luminous. And but that was, by the time I was 5, I remember a lot, seeing a bunch. And then growing up, I've seen some killer stuff growing up. You bet. Yeah, daylight, not far. Yeah. We had a video online that's 21 minutes long of a small orb. It flies over us going toward the west, toward the sunset, and it stops quite a ways away, probably 20 miles away. and it ejects a massive plume of light, brighter than the sun. And it's literally, and it looks, I guess it's plasma or whatever it is, and that comes out of it, and then the ship goes down and hangs out, and that stuff dissipates, and then it blips out and blips back in like another 15 miles away, and it does it again. But instead of it dissipating this time, the plasma or whatever it is unfolds, takes a shape, and creates what would be looks like a disc, probably a mile or 2 miles across, and then that tilts and flies up and flies away. And that's on our YouTube channel. That's one of
Wow.
There's 9 UFOs in that video. So if you take it frame by frame and count everybody who's partying and flying around, there's 9 Dior bags. I've never seen a UFO, but there's 9 Dior bags up there. One big one.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's a trip. It's awesome that you mentioned how your Dior bag folded over and transmuted or transformed or
it starts out a big ball, then it splits in the middle and then unfolds and elongates out into this shape, and then it tilts and see ya.
Yeah, it's like it goes from light, even if it seems to have density, but it like.
Well, imagine you have
physical objects.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you had a can of Coke, and you could pour it out and make a tanker truck of gasoline out of it. You could put it out there and then turn it into what you want. It's almost like you're going to manifest something, and here's the energy for it, and then here's the identification of it, and it becomes what you just put out the energy for. That's what it looks like. I mean, because it's how did all that come out of a small orb? And then now there's a giant mile-wide thing, so you can't fit a mile-wide thing inside there, and it's pretty amazing. And then one actually, if you look really close, you go around, there's a door opens in the roof, and a smaller one flies out the bigger one in the end. Goes out the roof. So.
Yeah, and what's crazy is I've seen similar stuff, and millions of other people have seen this similar Dior bags doing similar things. It's really, to me, it's awesome. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I've seen one turn into a damn dragon. There's no other explanation for what I saw. I was like, from all aspects, I'm like, that Dior bag just turned into a freaking flying black dragon, and then it turned back into a Dior bag. People watching us right now who got no idea what the hell Dior bag means is going, what are these guys talking about?
Just chimed in here. You can't see. Yeah, I was just checking some stuff. I don't see any questions on this end too much. Oh,
all right.
Oh, I do see one from Glassman's World. That's Dan. That's a great guy. How do you get DNA evidence? You can't cross-match it against anything, right? Yeah, I mean, you can. It's going to show up. Human shows up as human. And that's usually where they kind of call it right there and say, oh, it was human. So, which is the big thing that we were perpetuating over the years with the infamous doctor, was that, he always said it was Gigantopithecus, which is, a great ape, and would not have human DNA. And we've always said it's a human, and we kind of pushed that to the point because any and all bipedal primates have the same DNA. They're all human. They all contain human DNA. There is no such thing as a bipedal primate that doesn't have the DNA of a human, period. So
aren't they just a few genes or something off?
Well, the whole point is the classification. All bipedal primates are considered human by science, period. That's how they're classified. So for any PhD to run around for 40 years saying that it's a big ape, and then everything we know about it, it's bipedal. Well, it means it's not an ape, it's a human. So we actually shifted that over. We broke that over the last couple of years. Now that same person is going ancient human instead of ancient monkey.
Well, and that's probably better for them to do so now because, because it's intelligent.
I couldn't believe anyone did that because I get ours right out of the curriculum. Here's the definition. If I could show you a picture right now, I would. It's like, here's the definition. in the modern anthropological curriculum. Period. There it is. This is how science sees it. There it is. There's the classification. And then you got a PhD running around for 40 years telling the opposite. So what did all the other PhDs watching this think about him perpetuating ape, yet it's a biped? When they know that biped ape is human. So it's just so weird that they, yeah.
Well, didn't want to say it was ancient human at the time.
No.
He would have lost his job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it went from Gigantopithecus to Australopithecus. So whatever.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so new stuff that you've covered, your technology that you're doing. You've been investigating some spots. Not willing to share, but you're filming like always, right? You're filming what you guys are doing.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges, man, that you've been having out in the field? Any new challenges out in the field, or
usually land access? So that's usually the issue. And then we get people want to shoot at you every once in a while and whatnot. But besides that, land access. So that people have a lot of fear, I guess, and suspicion and whatnot. So most of these ancient sites are usually, and cache sites and whatnot, are on private land or land that is secured in one nature or another, whether it be a wildlife reserve or whatever. So land access is usually the hardest, trickiest stuff. I mean, besides death traps and rattlesnakes and whatever, Bigfoot's rip you in half.
Scorpions and bears and lions and tigers.
Oh my. Yeah, exactly.
At least the lions, mountain lions, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and any other? Are you working with any other researchers? Tell me about who's on your team right now. You said Chris is on your team. When you go out for exploration, Taylor's on your technology team. You working with anyone else?
Yeah, I work with actually quite a few people. Just depends on what we're doing, And one person I want to say a huge shout out to is Doug Wright. Of course, Josh Lawrence, Bob Fenstermaker, Stephanie Waldo was our archaeologist for over a decade. These are all kind of the long-termers that have been with us that are go on the inside and things. Then there's a lot of affiliates as well. But I want to say, thanks to Doug Wright, though, is in particular, because he's been really helping out with getting me gear and equipment. And even my car the other day, people saw what I was driving. I was driving an old AMC Eagle, hadn't run in 10 years. I just fired it up and took it out. It was choking, spitting, dying, whatnot, And Doug just out of nowhere just orders me a carburetor, and says, I got you a carb coming. He's not a wealthy guy or anything. He works for his money. And, but right. He knows what I've got is tight, and we're trying to do an awful lot on very little, in comparison to what we're trying to achieve,
Right.
And so he knows these, and he's just one of the team, one of the guys, and did that. So, but I've got quite a few people we work with, and we'll be working with in the near future. I'll give a shout out to George Harvey up there on the res. Haven't got to work with him in a while. But these are some of the ones we do. Ron Kasser, of course, he's become a brother of mine. He's active USFS, probably the first one to just come out and say, yeah, Bigfoots are real. Not on behalf of the Forest Service, but yeah, he's seen them, he knows. And, he did it right from the USFS desk at his office and was on my live stream and said, yeah, they're real. So Boyd Omer, another one, that's another guy I work with a lot. He's BFRO, but he's the inspiration behind the KXPD3 series of parabolic microphones we build.
Yeah. You got a lot of cool tech on your site, man. So for those of you, at least who are coming through my channel, you got to check out Robert's website or his page. He's got all kinds of cool tech that you can use out in the field. So I highly encourage you to go there.
So I've got a question from RL Snipers. Any technology to block EMF? Well, in basically anything that's going to shield electric current. So, a blanket with steel wool in it, copper. They make all types of EMF shielded clothing now, hats, anything like that. But copper screen is how you can shield EMF. And if you really want to shield the heat, ground it. And that's how you block EMP. So
And they've got some shirts now that they're weaving copper into,
Mm-hmm.
some clothing, a whole
Mm-hmm.
bunch of stuff that can definitely help, protect you against that stuff. And then I always, tell people, do not forget about our wonderful, superpowers, which is our consciousness. We talked about that earlier,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure that we are, speaking, thinking, that protection, and having our energy field that we're walking with expand, and to also repel all those things that we would call negative or harmful to us.
Mm-hmm.
That we have that ability to to shift those
You
things
know,
and transmute those things.
you talk about that, and one of the things on the ancient sites, and you think, what are the difficulties you have, and that is actually one of them. So I'm not going to pretend to know what it is. Residual haunting? Is it a curse? Is it a demon? Whatever. I'm not going to even pretend to be able to identify any of that and discern. But what I can tell you is that awareness of some type or another accompanies some of these ancient sites. And the more special they were, or maybe the more pain that was there, or, the more people passing away, or whatever it is, affects the physical locations of these things. And often there seems to be sentience behind it, will and intent. And some of them can be pretty damn dark. And often, not so often anymore because we haven't been doing this work that much anymore, but when we did before, some of the big stuff we did, we've had to actually remove people from the projects at no fault of their own. They would get upset or angry and not realize it's not their emotion, that
Right.
us being there inspires anger. And it might have been a real jerk off who did the work, and we're going to come in anyway. And because we don't really care about the jerk off, often we're there to validate the people who the jerk off enslaved, to let people know that they existed and they were wonderful people and they did amazing things, but no one knows they ever even were there because somebody just mopped them all up, made them work in a hole, wasted them all, and flattened their village. So we go on their behalf, but not so much the other. But they can certainly be there, and they can do physical things, and more so they can affect people internally because the people don't have a conception that this isn't their own emotional quality or their own emotional state. So they'll feel confusion or fatigue or anger or whatever. And really it's coming from something else. And I try to
Right.
make people aware of that in advance, that if you get mad, have to understand that that's a weapon being used against you. So you can get as angry as you want, but you better not express it to anybody here, against anyone, like it's justified or you're gone, and so we've actually had to do that before. So.
Yeah, no, you bring up some valid points because it is real,
Mm-hmm.
and if they're not attuned and spiritually developed enough, and not that I'm claiming to decide who is and who isn't, but those who aren't become victim to that without knowing. So
they don't know.
if you're telling people in advance, I think it's super important, especially at these ancient sites, because that medicine there, or that power, or that residual, we can come with all the names that you even said previously, that energy is there. And if they're not prepared for it, strong mind and really with that spiritual mind, then they can become the tool for that energy, that entity, and hurt people, or hurt themselves. So that's super important to know. And people just got to have the right hearts, man, because I could just tell you from our family's experience, every once in a while, when my uncles would let someone on the team or someone to come with us, usually when they weren't right, something crazy would happen to them, or creating situations that were unsafe for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and as you know, and I know, the natives tell of stories in certain places. They're like, hey, we're not even rolling with you. Like John Wesley Powell, when they had their native guide. There were some places he was like, hey, it's cool. John Wesley Powell and his group said, hey, we're going to camp here. And he said, that's real cool that you guys are going to camp there, but I'm not.
Yeah, this whole valley we live in, an Apache elder woman told me that this whole valley was off limits for thousands, their entire history, and there's no real artifacts here or archaeological sites between around 8 or 9,000 years ago and about 200 years ago, 150 years ago. There was no one here, and it was off limits. They wouldn't come into this valley. And I said, what was the story? And she said, well, we were told it was the home of Medicine Rock, and it was home of the little people. And if you go in there, you don't come back out, period. And that was about a 60-mile round valley that I'm sitting in the center of right now, which is why we actually moved back over here. So
moved a little bit further away.
There is some really cool. No, this we're in the middle of it. There is some unbelievable stuff here. A site on our website called 0 Point, and there's advanced ancient technology buried there. And I tried to share that with a couple big names over at Phenomenon, and I don't think they got it. But yeah, there's there's a Dior bag, I guess, that was abandoned thousands of years ago, and it's sitting in the ground right there. Yeah, and it's still functioning, and yeah, it'll fry all your equipment and everything in your hands. It's really bad.
Right.
And
that sounds very similar to Skinwalker Ranch. Ryan Burns, and he's over there. Yeah, and that area over there has got underground. A lot of people haven't even thought to think, well, gee, what was Bigelow doing? I don't see any buildings up out here where they were operating.
Yeah, actually, Ryan's land there's. We did research there, and we registered radiation there that's definitely not natural in origin, and it's pretty hot. It's really hot. And
it's active. It's active.
It's active, and it's hot, and it pulses in an algorithmic feature and stuff. So it's similar to the site 0 Point we have. And then now that you mention it, when we stayed there, we stayed in a trailer house. Ryan invited us up. I'd never met him yet. He wasn't there, so we got in there. We were doing our deal, and Tara and I stayed in a camper there. And we were in one Saturday, we were there the whole weekend. We were there one Saturday, and the following Saturday, it got hit by a bolt of energy, and it vaporized the camper, vaporized it. There was not even aluminum. There was steel.
And the one you were staying in that the week before?
Erased it completely off the map. Yeah, Skinwalker Ranch's cameras caught it. And it's a straight up, it's not like this all over. It's straight like this all the way to it. And then there's a little disc sitting over in the sky on the side. And it literally vaporized it. It erased it. It just erased it. It was
crazy.
Yeah. And then later, now he's shown this, so I can talk about it now. I knew about it for a while. I wasn't able to talk about it. But they put a container in that camper's place, a steel container, the ship container goes on a ship. And something picked it up in the air higher than the building that's next to it and turned it about 30 degrees and set it straight back down. And when it did, it hit the roof edge of the other building and busted up the roof real bad when it came back down. Not tornado style, straight up, turned it and straight back down. A full shipping container.
Something just letting him know, hey, we're here.
You're letting us know,
Yeah. Got a question. Dawes Guy 573 says, until they see it, they won't believe it. That's when we were talking about Dior bags earlier and the things that you were sharing that happened from them. Price Productions has a question. Do you think the Dior bags are Atlantean technology? I'll let you ring in first.
I don't know. When you say Atlantean, I think that's basically just a name for the world before the flood or before a catastrophe. I don't even believe, and actually what we know of Atlantis being from the writings of Plato, it wasn't a place, it was a kingdom. And they did have their home base, and that was King Atlas or whatever, where he was over the top of their home base by the Atlas Mountains and all this other crap. So, but they ruled, they were the culture that had dominion of the planet before that event. So do I think that it's their technology? I think their technology was to that level. I also think that it existed long before the world ever knew an Atlantean was going to be here. And I think it'll existed the entire time. It still exists, and it'll exist after all this is gone. They'll still be there. So I think that not one culture and not one time had that technology. And really, you can go all over the world, everywhere in the world, talks about histories that had those abilities, that had that tech. And I think and I think this is why it's been kept secret so long in physics and everything else, religion, and the whole thing's been spun around, is because that tech isn't complicated. It's actually easy. It's too easy. It's build it in your garage easy. And just it's knowing what to do and how to do it. And that's it. And if that little secret ever gets out, then humanity becomes free very quickly. So does anything else. Also, humanity becomes dangerous very quickly. And so it's a real banger right at that point, whether you're going to go on existing or cease to exist at that point. So I think that everybody's have it. I know the Hopi talk about the pavotas, is that, in the end days, your flying pavotas be found and show your history is true. I've seen pots with their pavotas painted on the side flying over the pueblos, so whose was what and when. And I've seen these craft, we have them in glyphs out here, 9,000-year-old glyphs. And we've got, I have two of the idols in my possession of aliens that were dated, the adhesive on the inlay is 9,700 years old. That would have been just after the catastrophe and kind of people crawled out from the mud and the ice and whatnot. And that was already full blown, and they might've been ultra terrestrial. It could be from here, but they weren't human and highly advanced, and came back and talked to the people, messed with the people. We've got their petroglyphs and their artifacts and all this crap. So, I think everybody had the tech a few different times, and I don't think it turned out great at the end of most of those.
Yeah. And just to use the word Atlantis or Atlantean, I agree with you. Global civilization, pre-flood. And yeah, they had the technology, and at every kingdom of this world kingdom, because they had it, the ancient Vedas talk about, the flying machines. We got the Egyptians. So
well, that's why when it's in popular media is not information. It's not to be learned from. It's entertainment. And so 90% of the people writing the scripts and doing have no clue what they're talking about, and are literally reading it for the first time when they script these shows. They have no clue. So they cannot cover all the different bases. So when you talk about like the Nephilim versus the giants versus Bigfoot, well, those are the popularized 3 titles, because they can't popularize 100. Okay, and then talk about all of them. It needs to be simplified into something people can get behind and follow. And that's all the choreography to creating entertainment. So when you go back through your own information in your own head and you try to summarize all this and put it into context, you have to realize that if I'm using tags and titles in the populace of humanity and the popular media, then I probably need to go get more information and factor a lot of other things in when I go to start making conclusions and forming beliefs. And that's not to down anybody, because we all only go by what we know and what we've been exposed to. And so, like you just said, India has a previous advanced epoch. The Hopi have a previous advanced epoch.
They all do.
They all do. And so how many times has there been this previous? And maybe they weren't even human. Maybe Denisovan may have had high technology. We have no clue. And we shouldn't expect to have any evidence of it, really.
Well, we know the Mexica or the Aztec, they speak of the 4 previous worlds, and we're in the 5th. So do the Hopis.
So do the Hopi.
They may have an extra, this may be the 6th. Maybe we're in the 6th, or
because of the emergence.
Yeah. And so, just taking that information, it's like, and I'm convinced that there are those who survived the flood. We already know they did. We know they did, because even the giants who were, or Nephilim, or whatever you want to, from biblical times, Bible times, were supposed to be wiped out by the flood. Well, we know that the giants survived because they made it even into this next world.
To quote the Bible about that, it says, and they existed in the earth in those days, and even after that. It tells you in the days of the flood, they existed in the earth in those days of the flood, and even after that. So even after the flood, they were still around, existing in the earth. That's in the
yes.
Bible.
And
So who could?
yeah,
So
and
it's,
so it's written there, and and that technology they had, they could have easily, just like we, and when I say we, even individuals, but they're even world governments have prepared for doomsday. Whether that's massive seed vaults, underground caverns where the elite can go live, you better believe those from Atlantis or Mu or whatever, they as well had technology, and they had planned to be able to make it through whatever cataclysm was coming their way.
well, there's an Inuit story. Not to cut you off, but before we get away from it, there's an Inuit story about one of the last non-contacted guys up there. He was a relative of a writer, and they wanted to get him off the ice. Basically, he had been living out there and blah blah blah. And he was one of the last guys. Well, when they got him off the ice, he related a story in his native tongue about meeting a giant, and that him and another guy, when they were boys, had gone way up a river, and all their people told them, you go into the headwaters of the river, the mouth of the river, but don't ever try to go to the headwater. And they said, so you get up a little ways, and they were young men. They didn't care. What's the adventure? We'll face anything, let's go. So they went miles up there, and the other guy, one of them, some things happened, it got tough, whatnot, went back, and he kept going. And I guess things got bad. I'm summarizing, but things got bad for him to the point where he may not going to make it back, weather-wise and fatigue and all this other stuff. Because he was not with a canoe. He didn't have anything with him anymore. He was on foot next to this stream going up higher. And I guess he had made a small camp, and something showed up, and he couldn't tell what it was. And then he passed out, and then he basically awoke on an escalator, but a flat one, like the flat ones at the airport you can get on. They just go down flat. You don't have to walk. Something just like that. And it went through a cave for a while, and he's trying to describe it, but he doesn't even know English, and he's an uncontacted guy. He doesn't know what a TV is, has no clue what a radio is, and he's describing this thing. He's sliding on this thing that's like a belt, and he's being pulled on the belt through a cave, and then he went through something that was shining brilliant like the sun through the walls, and he describes metal to the guy. He's at a building. He's describing metal to a guy, pointing at stuff, saying it was like this inside, and it became that way. So it went from a cave to something structured, and with metallic. And then there was some kind of beings in there that he was very scared of, and they grabbed him, and they held him, and then they locked him up somehow. They detained him, and he went to sleep. And when he woke up, there was a giant there, giant human-looking guy. And he explained to him in his native tongue that those other things were pests, and that these giant guys had been gone from this facility for a while, and they just got back. And they ran those things out of there, but they come in and infiltrate their sites when they're not there. And then that he was going to return him to his home. And there was a large pasture, or like a meadow, where he was, and the man that was taking the interpretation said there was something in the meadow that you couldn't see, but it was really large. And this guy, the relative that was getting the interpretation, said he believed it was a ship, because the giant told him
cloaked
that there was that there was a thing there, whatever, blah 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 blah. This is how we got here, but apparently this was their facility from before. I don't know how long before. Could have been gone 2 weeks. I don't know, but the point being is that they were gone from this underground facility, returned. There was an infiltrating other beings in there who were jerks. The giants weren't bad guys. And when they returned him, they didn't return him just to where that meadow was, where he went to sleep and this all occurred. They returned him all the way back to his canoe. So he hit the water and go back.
Right.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, coming from who it came from. And like I said, his relative was a writer. And he basically documented what the guy said. Now, where would the guy have even come up with half of it?
And I fully believe it, because I am fully aware there are giants who were cannibals, but there were giants who were actually good giants and keepers of the ancient wisdom, and who were for the good of mankind, of life in general. So for sure, I believe that. And then cloaked ships are a reality. I ain't trying to convince nobody. I've witnessed them multiple times.
Yeah.
To me, it's a wrap. I've seen it. That technology exists. So whether that's our government and pre our government, that technology has been around for sure.
Absolutely.
And I don't give a crap what anyone thinks about what I'm saying. That is real. 100%. Cloaked ships are real.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So coming from back then as well, once again, right? All of us are all about our experiences. You and I have had experiences that maybe a majority of the general public hasn't. There's still millions of people who have had them, but we've had these unique experiences that maybe a majority of people haven't. So they can't resonate with it. They can't even really, get down with it or say, you guys are just telling stories. Bullshit. It's real.
Absolutely.
It's real deal. A friendly YouTuber, by the way, hello, friendly YouTuber, says, what would pre-flood civilization have looked like on the North American continent? Like their infrastructure, industry, technology, etc. Did the conquistadors find their tech? So I don't know if you want to ring in on some of that.
That's a super interesting question. So there are remnants naturally that you can take a look at from things they have found in North America. Usually it comes from the 300, what they call the 300 million year old coal layer. Like the bell, they found a metal bell, they found metal figurines, and a few other things from before. And they seem, looking at the metallurgy, the mix and alloys are pretty advanced. The design and the castings and things like that look like, they could be 1700, equivalent to 1700s America now. But right now we still have places making things like that in Pakistan and many other places. There's in China, India. They're still making lots of hand cast items that look just like we did at turn of the century. And even though we are as well making extreme tolerance spaceship parts over here. So I don't know if I've actually seen enough to get a good idea what the end sum of how advanced they could be, other than the writings like by the Hopi and others like that, if you have a flying pavota, you're pretty damn advanced. You got energy weapons you can take out your enemies with, you're pretty damn advanced. So go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, and I would jump in to say that keep in mind that they were more connected with Mother Earth, with nature. They still had the technology, but even their technologies. Keep in mind, a lot of these were they were could be floating cities, things that were not just on the ground, so that you're going, we're looking for ruins.
Floating cities, they're recorded. They say they had floating cities,
right? And so yeah. Yeah, keep going.
Well, and people don't realize, like, there's lots of towns out here where you can't see that there was a town there. And I want to remind you, it's like modern Lebanon versus what it is now, or other areas. It can go from shopping malls and McDonald's to you can't find a single piece of metal, period. Because they've broken every single piece of concrete they could and scrapped all the iron for money. They took the rebar out of all the concrete. There's nothing left. All you got's rubble. This happens in just a few years. People annihilate what was there before them, and anything that's important or of value, they take it, and it gets reprocessed into somewhere else, some other culture, whoever will trade you for it. And we look at what iron, if you took an iron bar or car axle or a car, set it over here, go 10,000 years, what does anyone here honestly think they're going to find? You're going to find a big rusted patch, probably 30 feet in diameter or bigger. It's going to have some flecks of carbon, and that's it. That's all you're going to find is a mineral stain with chunks of carbon. The carbon were the tires and the interior and things like that. And then the metals that leach out, and then bacteria and other things conglomerate those back into nodules and all this. And guess what? We find that all over the place for no reason. In all these sandstone cliffs and mud layers and fossilific regions, there are just big plots of iron, this and that. And you can notice, like when a tree goes down and fossilizes, it grabs the iron from the surrounding sands and takes it through bacterial and atomic reaction and leaches it all into where the tree used to be, and you end up with a big rusty tree. Where did all that iron come from? That's really that's the remnants you'd have. Even just 10,000 years, you wouldn't have anything. Rock. It's pretty much it.
Right. Yeah. And who's to say? I mean, if global flood, and we're talking global flood, then things could be thousands of feet. They could be tens of miles, 100 miles. I don't know. I haven't done any math on this.
Estimates are 1,700 to 20,000 feet of sediment sits on top of it all. Except where the mountains went up. And when the mountains, I believe that the crust collapsed. And when it did, the crust collapsed around hard portions or at the edges and left the mountain peaks. And I believe that the literally crust collapsed, the water came out, left the mountain peaks, all that material goes back down, lands back on top of the collapsed stuff. You end up with a 1,700 to 20,000 foot of sediment, which has actually been computer modeled to be on top. So all you'd have is this jagged material sticking out that was never on the top before. And in everything between it would be 1,700 to 20,000 foot of sediment on top of whatever, on top of your forests, on top of your valleys, your rivers, your cities, or whatever, if any of that survived larger than a quarter inch. You take a massive flood, will grind a piece of concrete to nothing in no time, grind rock to nothing, in just to powder in nothing flat. So you take a worldwide event like that, you spin it all, turn it, and bury it. All you're going to find is the occasional remnant in a gravel deposit somewhere. And that's exactly what they have found. In coal and in gravels, they have pulled out figurines, metal artifacts. So really, based on that question and what we would see how advanced was North America, I'm going to say it was advanced as the rest of the planet. I think that there were centers, city centers or whatever that was super advanced, surrounded by vast areas of non-advanced cultural people. Just like we had until the 60s. Sorry to say it, but like Africa and all these, man, they were living just like they were 3,000 years ago in the 50s and 60s. Same kind of carts, same kind of everything was the same thing they did thousands of years ago. In the Middle East, they still pump water the same way with water wheels run by an animal or a person, so they haven't changed. Even though we're going to the moon and we got quantum technologies and super smart computers and the whole 9 yards, they still haven't changed. It doesn't affect their daily life. And I think that's just how it was back then.
Yeah. And their psychic powers, I think, were far more advanced than ours are today.
Well, if we didn't ignore them, where would we be, right? If we didn't ignore them and spit them down and say, oh, ESP's fake. When I was a kid, bro, ESP, the word ESP, you were completely batshit crazy if you'd lived in any of that stuff. Now we have bacteria communicating over 3,000 miles away. So,
Yeah, and we have scientists apparently coming out with studies saying that we've got communication between two people dreaming. We've got proof of their communication in the dream world. All that kind of stuff. Ron Kasner says, "Hey, Robert," and he says, "I agree." And
Ron's member of my team. Yeah,
right on. And then friendly YouTuber says, "Great points, thanks." Well, you got it.
Absolutely.
Friendly YouTuber. You must be quite friendly. We appreciate you.
Friendly so far, anyway. Good deal.
That's it. Let's see. Any advice? And by the way, what time? I don't even know what time it is. Oh, we've been going for 2.5 hours here, huh?
Probably.
I'd apologize, but I'm not sorry.
Is what it is, Dan. Is what it is. Well, we haven't spoken really much either since we originally met and whatnot. And I know we've got plans to do things together, so
absolutely,
it's good to catch up.
Absolutely, I appreciate.
It's more than a show, you guys. It's actually a buddy of mine, so that I want to.
This is actually powwowing and exchanging of energies, thoughts, and ideas, and love, man, and love.
Yeah. I met Dan at the Moonlight Gathering to start off with. So
last year,
and Dan actually walked up to me and told me, I got a weird feeling you're someone I'm supposed to get to know or work with in the future or whatever you said. And I felt the same way. I felt it since then. So
Yeah, man, me too. I appreciate you. I feel that cosmic connection, man. The cosmic connection. Any advice for any up and coming explorers? Some of the younger generation. You got any advice for them?
Yeah, absolutely. The world has not been figured out. Everything has not been found. Don't believe anything that limits you. Period. Don't believe what limits you. You don't have to believe anything else other than, well, I would say, the creator, because trust me, it works. But don't believe what there's limitations by what anyone tells you, because you're going to find that the world has not all been explored, examined. The wonders are not gone. They have convinced us for at least the last 40 years that, hey, don't even look over there. We already looked under that rock. We've already been up that tree. We already looked under there. And it's not true. They have not barely scratched the damn surface. And the ones that did, most of them aren't alive to tell the story, and they never wrote it down. So don't act like that everything that they've got out there is all there is. You know, the wonder's not gone. You know, you can dream like a child again. You can have fantasies about what's out there, that there's mystery and monsters and the whole nine yards, because there really is mystery and monsters in the whole nine yards. So
Yes. Beautiful advice, man. Beautiful advice. I co-sign it. I double stamp it, because that is real. That is real. And yeah, man, the mystery of life is eternal. And even once you do discover something new, there'll be still more to discover.
It's infinite.
Yeah.
But the worker bees don't do too well when they sit and wonder about all the things that might exist. So
for sure. Ron says, Mr. Kryder, a wealth of knowledge, waiting on the book, Robert. So he's waiting on your book. And Price Production says, well said. Amen to that. Well
Thank
said,
you, Price.
Sure.
And Ron, I love you, brother, man. It'll be good to see you again.
Any unsolved mystery, whether you learned it as a kid, whether it's something that you learned as an adult, is there one specific unsolved mystery? But like I said, there's many, but is there one that really stands out to you that you are still, it's on your to-do list?
Yeah.
To go after.
Yeah. And I'll tell you about it as soon as I tell you about this comment. CR says, I guarantee if an engineer ever explored Rob's garage, their mind would be blown. And I want to point that out to my love and partner in life, Tara May, who seldom understands my mess and methodology. So CR might be able to help you with that one. So yeah, there is. I'm going to tell you something. So I set 3 goals when I was 6 years old. Honestly, this is going to sound insane. And the reason I set them was I didn't believe I could achieve any of the 3. But a life toward trying would be nuts, right? And I did all 3. Right?
Awesome.
They all 3 got done. Okay, so my next 3, you mentioned what's on the horizon, what's one of the things. Yeah, I'm just going to tell you about one of the 3. I want to dig up or excavate and recover a Dior bag. And we know where a couple are.
Got it. Badass. Well, please invite me as soon as you are ready to put, shovel to dirt or big equipment to the area. Would love to be there. To be there.
Well, I've got some brothers in this world that I've met, and they're gonna be. So that's the whole point.
Right on. Well, shoot, man. I had these questions written down, and we've covered most of them. Even when I didn't exactly ask the question, we kind of, went left, went right, and got to them. So, is there anything? Once again, tell people how to contact you.
So my name is Robert Kryder, spelled Kryder. You can find me by looking at my name. Kryder Exploration is our exploration group, our exploration company. We've had an LLC since the 2000s, so we're out there a little bit. We've got KryderExploration.com. We're on Facebook. We've also got a website. We're on YouTube at KX space Kryder Exploration. We also have a Facebook presence with the cryptid world. It's KX Cryptid Hominid. Then it's got a couple other things, Bigfoot and more. You can give KX Cryptid Hominid, it'll get you there. That's pretty much where we're at most of the time is YouTube and Facebook. We're also on X and a lot of others, but we just don't keep up with them.
There's too many, man. There's too many.
We're going to be doing more X because I can at least show some of the sketchier stuff over there. YouTube, like I said, just reams us. Love you, Google. Love you, YouTube. We're not scary. We're not your enemy. Come on, let us in.
Right. Knock this bull crap off.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's where we're available, and you can always reach out to me on email at explore EXPLORE be _it_all at hotmail.com. So exploreitall@hotmail.com.
Yeah, and any of my followers out there need to connect with Robert, just hit me up. Be happy to also connect you. Man, I can't thank you enough for spending this couple of hours for us to powwow basically and catch up, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you again and your lovely partner and breaking some bread, having some coffee, having some breakfast, going on some adventures.
That's it.
And hopefully shocking the world with some new discoveries. And yeah, man, I can't thank you enough. And I want to tell people, I want to make sure to say this, that what Robert does is not for the money. As a matter of fact, what we do, it's not for the money. It takes money. A lot of the times we're sacrificing other parts of our lives.
Dude, 100%. That's my whole life's been that way. Yeah, I've never made a dime like this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for those of you out there who want to support Robert, I know he's got ways that you can support him. I heard his buddy got him a carburetor. So I just encourage you guys, if it's on your hearts, to figure out how you might be able to help us on our journeys, whether that's offering to come help on one of our adventures, financially supporting this show, Robert's program, by buying stuff. Robert has great value in the things he offers, the technology, his new device that he's working on. I heard you said you got one more spot for a beta tester.
Yeah, we've got, basically we were going to bring in 20. I've got 19 right now. So we've got one more slot available. If you want to, anybody wants to shoot for that, then yeah, just reach out. And then we also we have Patreon and that stuff too. So, you can look for links on our channel. So
there you go. So I just encourage you, if it's on your heart, if it's on, if your spirit moves you, if the spirit moves you to support Robert or what I'm doing, we appreciate you. We love you. And yeah, it's just, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to keep doing what we're doing. Not this talking to you guys, but actually getting out into the field. It's just not cheap. And my family, I'm sure they would have wanted to go to Hawaii or something.
No, I know, man. So we have to say thank you to our families. I mean, big time too, because I know they sacrifice right along with us. So
they do, and have supported us, and and we're keeping legacies going. So anyway, enough with all that. I just want to say this man has got great value, and he's got tools you can use that when you pick them up from him, you're supporting his cause. As simple as that. And if you just remember to put out that positive energy, good vibes, think good things for me, good things for Robert and everyone in our community, that's also that magic spiritual help and support that goes beyond any kind of monetary help. So yeah, I just want to thank you again, brother. And I'll see you soon. Maybe we'll see each other at Moon Lake, or hopefully we might see each other before that on some adventure.
Sounds good, man. It sounds perfect.
All right.
Yeah, it's been great, Dan. Thank you so much for having me on, bro.
Thank you. Price Production says, great show, guys. Thanks. Well, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon. Have me on your show whenever.
All right, bro.
All right. Love you, man. Thank you.
Love you, man. Peace.
All right. Good night, everybody.